Okay, we are live.
Woo!
Yeah, thank you. So, firstly, most importantly, thank you so much for doing this, especially literally last minute. I don't think we could cut it any closer than a few hours beforehand, but
Oh, I'm sure we
I,
could.
well, okay, yeah, I guess we could. Alrighty, so I don't know what you saw of part one of this. I know you jumped in. I'm not sure how long you were there, but it was pretty generic, pretty basic. Nothing new was said in the defense of slavery. And not that I expected anything new to be said, but I was hoping. I was really hoping, especially with the video being so long. I was like,
Yeah,
okay,
especially broken into parts. Like,
yeah. Three
my
different
goodness.
sections. Three different sections. So I was hoping that they would do something new, but like you said earlier, it was more of just these anecdotes and these diversions, these distractions from actual biblical slavery. They could have made that video down into about a 5 minute video, which is typical.
Oh, yeah, if they'd edited
Yeah.
it, absolutely. It reminds me of a thing that Cameron Bertuzzi likes to do. When he has a difficult topic, he will just talk for like 10, 20 minutes and then change the subject and hope you don't notice he didn't actually answer the problematic question.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean that's apologetics. I mean, that's what they are. That's what they're meant to do. But unfortunately, people don't realize that. So yeah, you didn't miss much in the first one. It was, if you've heard one, you've heard them all. But they're supposedly they're going to get a little bit more detailed in the upcoming ones. I highly suspect that that's not going to be the case, but we'll give them a shot.
Well, there is a bit to react to anyway. I tried to like do us up some timestamps real quick so we could skip most of the bullshit, and I got like there's a little bit in the beginning, and then they do intro music and whatnot, and then they start talking about stuff, and there actually is some stuff. So I didn't finish because it'd chew up hours we didn't have until showtime. But
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
there's broadly speaking, at least in the first part, they bring up several points that we can talk about. So yeah.
okay, excellent. Well, good. I do have them. They're not necessarily slow speakers, but the videos are just so long. I do have them to like 1.25 speed.
Always a
If
good
you
plan.
need, yeah. If you need to be slowed down, just let me know. I think we'll be okay though.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into it.
Well, why didn't God just go ahead and ban slavery? He did. This right here is that type of slavery that was happening during the 1700s, 1800s, and even still continues to happen today. God has directly banned that altogether.
Yeah. See what I mean? Like
Yeah,
right
goodness,
off.
right off
Granted,
the bat.
that's
Yeah.
a coming soon bit. That's it's the teaser to hook you in to watch the video. God didn't actually do that.
No, he did not. Not in any way, shape, or form did he do that. So, all right, I guess we see what we're getting ourselves into. Wow.
Yep, fun times.
Yeah, all right, let's keep going.
Hello and welcome to Reasoning Through the Bible. My name is Glenn and this is Steve. And this is part two
Glenn
of
and
a
Steve.
topical series
Okay,
we're doing
I may
on
remember.
slavery in the Bible. And what prompted this was in our regular Bible study, we had gotten to Exodus chapter 21, and that deals with several things about slavery. And also in dealing with this, there's a lot of questions and comments, and there's a lot of sensitivity around the issue of slavery because there was so much pain. And we recognize that. If you were with our part one, we went into quite a bit of detail about.
Oh, they did cut it. There is a little bit of editing. Did you see that hard cut?
Yeah, oh yeah. They do. I think the best that I can tell, I think they have a some type of editor that takes out pauses, ums, and ahs.
Oh,
Because you'll see
that's
these.
definitely
Yeah,
handy.
yeah.
I wonder if they're using GoPro has a thing like that where it'll auto edit your software or not your software. The software will auto edit your video based on what it determines is the most interesting. I don't know how it does that, but it does that. It's for like wicked lazy people who want no say over their own editing.
yeah, like
But,
me.
whatever.
Yeah. I did notice that in the first one, there's these little micro jumps that you almost can't tell because it doesn't really cut anything out. But I think that's I think that's what they do.
Maybe,
I
maybe.
think. Yeah.
All the different types of slavery.
Oh, but I wanted to say on that first pause is that they did not go into quite a bit of detail in the first video. I watched the whole thing. I did a whole video on it. They did not go into any detail at all. I don't know why he's saying that, but
In the ancient world and how it was used. And just to reiterate here, though, Steve, is that we find the issue of slavery something not to be taken lightly. We certainly don't want to be accused of trying to just gloss over, pass over something that's a very serious sin.
Right. Well, and whenever you go through the scriptures
wait.
verse by verse,
How do they get the idea that it's a very serious sin? I mean, I will agree that it's a very serious moral wrong, but there is nada in any of Scripture that says it's in any way sinful.
that is true. Yeah, it's not a very serious sin. You're right. It's not a sin at all, unless God is actively allowing sin. But He wouldn't do that, right?
Yeah, no, that never happens.
No,
Or something.
not God.
when you get to these type of verses, you have to deal with them. You have to go through them. And I encourage go and listen to verse part 1
That
before
was a
you listen to
sloppy
this
cut.
part 2, because it puts a lot of things and explanations in some of the terms that we're going to be using in part 2.
So most of these passages that we're going to deal with today are in the Old Testament, specifically in Leviticus and Numbers and Exodus. And those passages are in a section of the scriptures that, again, you have to know where it is and what's going on. This is with the people of
I noticed this guy is this Glenn. I think they said his name was.
Yeah, I think that one's Glenn, and I lost the other guy's name. Like I said, I'm terrible with names, but he's Glenn, and the other guy is the other guy.
The other guy.
We're
He
7
has
minutes in. I already forgot his fucking name.
Yeah, I mean they're forgettable. Does mean he has a very hard WH enunciation on his where. He really gives that hard where.
Israel just prior to when they went into the promised land, the land of Canaan. And there was going to be wars with the Canaanites, and the Canaanites were a very evil people. They were frying their children on the heated metal arms of an idol called Molech. And
So we're 2 minutes and 28 seconds into this video, and I would almost mistake this for the first video, because that was he said that word for word, line for line in the first video. This is part 2, right? The realities of part 2. All right.
And God had sent them prophets, and the people of Canaan had refused to repent and change their ways. And so God was sending Israel in as judgment. That's the context of what was going on, is that there was a lot of evil going on, and he was giving Israel instruction.
Hey, so real quick, this is off topic, and it was off topic when he ran through that entire verse in the first video. But let me ask you, if there's a community of people, a group of people, and they're committing some type of atrocity, it's not like 2 or 3 people, but an entire tribe of people, an entire nation of people. Do you think there's any better way to stop them from committing these atrocities other than the complete annihilation? The women, the children, every single person.
Yeah, I mean, if they're killing their children, first of all, that's not really a thing. Like, how do you know that? How do you demonstrate that, right? And that's probably mentioned in scripture somewhere. I'm actually trying to look it up right now.
It's as far as I can tell, it isn't. And because I did look into this too, and there's really no historical extra biblical text to even support that this took place.
It's just a theodicy. I'll bet you. It's one of those things that, like, William Lane Craig comes up with. Well, maybe they were flame broiling their children. All we know is they were horrible and needed to be exterminated.
Yes.
And then somebody took that and went, "Oh, they are flame broiling their children." You know?
Yeah. No, I've looked into it, and I can't find any solid evidence that this took place. But I will give God credit. One way to stop children from being killed is to kill all of the children.
I mean, I had an EMT friend he was studying for his EMT exam, which he did pass, so he became an EMT friend. And when I was helping him, he told me that sometimes, as a medic, you actually want the patient to flatline because dead is a stable condition. They don't get worse from there. And that way the doctors know what they're dealing
Yeah.
with, whereas a person who's like hemorrhaging all over the place, and it struck me as really weird. But yeah, like, if you have a headache, you can always shoot yourself because it cures your headache.
It will cure your headache. It will. Yeah. No, yeah. It's just this. So not only are we sidelining and going going on side tangents, but it's because of their side tangents, which I'm sure this is going to be full of. But let's keep going.
The Mosaic Law is a set of instructions for when Israel gets to the Promised Land. And the Mosaic Law includes parts of Exodus, parts of Numbers, and all of Deuteronomy and Leviticus. And so there's a vast swath of the scriptures, approximately 3 books, that deal with all of these rules and regulations and things. And so we're going to today, again, we said last time we'd get to the passages and hit them right between the eyes. So we're going to do that today. We're going to start in Leviticus chapter 24 and deal with part of what's going on here when we talk about the Mosaic Law. And we can say with confidence here that there's a lot of high morality in the Mosaic Law. And this is one of the passages. And this one that we're going to read here really covers something that is a foundation for all of what we do. And Steve, can you read here in Leviticus 24, start at verse 17 and go down to 22?
If a man takes the life of any human being, he shall surely be put to death. The one who takes the life of an animal shall make it good, life for life. If a man injures his neighbor, just as he does done, so it shall be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, just as he has injured a man, so shall it be inflicted on him.
So this is where
Thus
we're
the one who kills
plagiarizing
an animal
from the
shall-
Code of Hammurabi, which is famous for putting that eye for an eye thing into law. There's a lot of that where there's just a cut and paste job from the existing moral codes around them, but God knows all, so
Oh yeah.
he's just gonna compile all the best moral teachings of humanity or something.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah, and so what I'm going to just predict that they're getting at here is that these laws apply to slaves, which I don't think is necessarily true because these are Mosaic laws. I think these are laws for Israelites. Then they apply to Israelites. I mean, you couldn't make let's say the Canaanites. You couldn't make the Canaanites follow these laws. And if you're going to slaughter the Canaanites, surely these laws aren't put in place to protect the Canaanites. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's one of the low-key contradictions in the Bible, like where it says if a man kills another man, that man's life is forfeit. He's to be put to death. By that very law, the person who puts him to death has killed another man and should also be put to death.
Yes.
So
yes, thou
thou
shalt not kill, but then also go and kill.
Yeah, it's a little trippy, but he does definitely have some kind of a modern takes on things that he just assumes and never even questions because he's seeing the conclusions he wants to reach. Like when it says man, he's taking it to be all people, but we know from history, from the context of the culture, women don't count.
Yeah,
Women
no,
are
definitely
property.
not. Right. No, absolutely. Yeah, so yeah, I guess you could say that it not only does it doesn't even extend it to all of the people in their tribe, let alone all of the nations around them from which they may buy slaves. But again, it's a side point. It's a diversion. It's a tangent because none of this has anything to do with slavery. It doesn't matter if, let's just grant it, the argument that all of these rules do apply to slaves and you can't kill them and you can't injure them. And it is, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth does apply to the slaves. It's all irrelevant because now we're just dealing with treatment of the slaves.
Yeah,
But
you
they're
still have slaves.
You're still owning other people as property. But, all right.
I'll make it good, but the one who kills a man shall be put to death. There shall be one standard for you. It shall be for the stranger as well as the native, for I am the Lord your God.
So that passage right there, of course, is a somewhat famous eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth passage, which is actually mentioned more than once, Stephen, in the scriptures. But it says here very clearly, again, point this out, verse 17, if a man takes the life of any human being. So if someone causes the death, in this case, murder of anyone, whether it's slave or free, then they have to be.
Well, he's kind of reading that into the text.
Uh-huh.
It does not explicitly say that, but I mean, again, it's a side point. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and there's cultural context to consider too. What was that? Exodus. Shit, what was he looking at? Because his thing in the corner says Leviticus, and that's not what he's reading right now.
Yeah, it says Leviticus 24:17. But no, Leviticus 24:17 is, I think, dealing with the buying the no, that's 25:44.
Yeah, I'm just curious because that thing where it says human being, that's a very modern term. So I'm curious what it actually says there.
Yeah, let's I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually thought that the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth wasn't actually biblical. But then when he brought this up, I just assumed I was wrong. I thought an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth was not in the Bible. It was probably from some type of Jewish text, but I thought it wasn't biblical.
Yeah, it's it definitely originated in the Code of Hammurabi, which is also useful because we know from archaeology when the Code of Hammurabi was written, so it lets us put a date marker on the Pentateuch, the books of Moses, because we know Hammurabi's rule was during the 18th century BCE, which means Exodus and the rest of them could not be written before that. Yeah, that's not relevant to the slavery thing, but
it's already semi-frustrating. But if they're gonna go over it, then hey, you know what? We can do this.
Okay, Exodus 21 appears to be the
21-24.
Oh, it's our favorite section about the Hebrew servants and things.
Yeah.
Let's see, 24. Yeah, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound. Okay, so it's what was that? Damn it, what was it he was talking about with any human being part?
Yeah, let's see.
It's further up towards the top of the chapter.
If a man, yeah, I like how they have it looks like they have like sources, like you can click on these, but they're displaying that. So he's using the New American Standard. Maybe that version has what he's talking about.
Yeah. It looks like I've got the NIV, and it says anyone who strikes a person with a fatal blow is to be put to death.
Yeah. So I'm sure the version that he's using, which is, you can do a whole side tangent on all by itself, the fact that there's different versions of the Bible.
Yeah, and they went hunting and picking for one that described things the way they wanted them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it looks like if people are fighting in a pregnant, but so yeah, as I was saying earlier, before I even knew where this passage of the Bible came from, if you just scroll up, all you have to do is scroll up, and you can see where it states who these laws apply to. Mm-hmm. Exodus 21. I mean, these are the laws you are to set before them, the them being Hebrew servants, and everything else that follows does not apply to non-Hebrew servants, as far as I can tell.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, Leviticus makes it clear that there are separate rules for Hebrews and non-Hebrews. But Yeah, in King James, that verse says, "He that smiteth a man so that he die shall surely be put to death." So you don't even it's anyone who kills a man. We're reversing the thing. It's not if a man takes the life of anyone. It's if anyone takes the life of a man.
Yes.
Is the older, more traditional version. So that's
Yeah.
fascinating. And it
Yeah,
also doesn't
and
say that you necessarily have to kill them. Be put to death. God could be doing it. Leave it in
yeah,
God's hands.
yeah. That let Jesus take the wheel, as they say.
If someone causes the death, in this case, murder of anyone,
Again, we're reading that into the text.
Hmm.
In this case, murder, not necessarily, but
Whether
And
it's
okay.
and
slave or
still has nothing to do with the slavery issue.
Yes, yes, and yeah, that's why these videos, while they are longer, they're only longer because they're not addressing the actual topic that they're supposed to be addressing. They're all
Hmm.
they're talking about is the possible treatment of slaves, which is still pretty awful. I actually really like the saying "an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind" because it's true. It's 100% true. So even this is immoral, but it dealing with the treatment of slaves still does not address the fact that slaves can be had in the first place.
Yeah, it's a thing. Some apologists are better at it than others, but they all have to do this dancey dance around the topic. It's a tacit admission that they know the thing they're dealing with is a big honking wrong in the middle of their perfect moral text.
Yes. Yes. And you hit it right on the nose there. They have to do this. They cannot not do this. But
then they have to be punished for that. And so the context here is any human being. And so then look down at verse 22. Verse 22 says specifically what? There shall be one standard for you. It shall be for the stranger as well as the native, for I am the Lord your God. So, Steve, what is that saying when it says one standard for you?
Steve
And
is
we
the other
just
guy.
said in the
Okay.
context of that same paragraph,
yeah, Stephen
Now I forgot the first guy. God damn
Stephen we'll just say Big Stephen, Little Steve. How's that?
it.
How's that work?
Sure, sure. But yeah, they're doing it. They're reading into it thing again. Like, yes, it does say there will be one law for both Israelis and foreigners. But again, that doesn't address the slavery issue, and it certainly doesn't. He's trying to say that it means that the slaves are covered under the law too, which it does not expressly say. In fact, there's several other laws that make a very strong case that slaves are not protected under the laws of free people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was did we so in Exodus 21 23, the eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, hand for I I'm still not entirely sure that's where he is.
Yeah, notice he left off 26, which is it
Is
really
that what he
shows the
did?
distinction between slave and free. If you take out the if you cost someone an eye and then they're a free man, then you lose your eye in compensation. But
Yeah.
according to 26, an owner
And
who hits a
27.
slave and destroys an eye must let the slave go free to compensate for the eye. They don't lose their own eye, the slave just becomes free.
Yes, so it is not eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. It's eye for money, tooth for money. 27 says something to the same effect with the tooth as with the eye. But I'm not sure. Is he reading Leviticus? I know that these laws can be just a little bit redundant.
Oh, for sure. No,
But where?
he's definitely in Exodus right now, even though the little tab thing. I think I don't even know. I don't know what software he's using.
Yeah, he probably has something else pulled up. But where? So 22, Exodus 20. I'm missing where it says treat them equally, both stranger and. I'm missing where it says that. And if he's reading from a different section, I want to be on the same page as him, so we're not straw manning his arguments here.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that part is.
All right, let's see here. So yeah, the Moses. No. There shall be one standard for you, which shall be strangers for as well as the native. Okay, I'm going to look this up. Well, we let the video.
What's that
play.
saying? When it says one standard for you, and we just said in the context of that same paragraph, any human being.
Right.
So the entirety of these 2 or 3 books of the Mosaic Law have to be applied to people how?
The same for everybody in regards to this. But now, as we've mentioned before, if you broke one of these laws, you broke the whole law itself. And as we've also brought out before, that the law wasn't just for practicality as they went into the land, but it was also a tutor to show in the greater context that mankind wasn't going to be able to keep all of these laws. At some point in time, they were going to break one or the other, and that they were going to have some sort of a redemption in order to.
Hey, didn't we do that in the very beginning? Didn't that happen long before the laws came? Isn't there this whole big thing
Details.
about the fall? Yeah. So, all right. So, according to this guy, the Adam and Eve in the fall is kind of irrelevant to wearing mixed fabrics. I get okay.
I mean, in fact, if you want to look at it through the lens of Christianity, there's no point in following any of the laws because either you accept Jesus or don't. And so you're either 100% redeemed, or even if you break no laws at all, 100% guilty.
Yeah, that is true.
Have a relationship with God, and of course that came through Jesus Christ through the sacrifice. But in general, if you broke one of these laws, you broke everything. This is very clear. If you take the life of any human being, whether it's a stranger or a native, meaning an Israelite, then you're to be put to death.
And as you've highlighted there, Steve, in verse 22, there shall be one standard. It says literally judgment. There's one judgment for all people, whether they be citizens, slave, free, strangers. The law has to be
that's
applied. All of
talking
these.
about a dual standard, and it, as we said, expressly put slaves in a different category. So he's full of bullshit on that one. But it's not like it's a single law, because as we talked about it the last time we got together, it goes through, you do this, you're put to death. You do this, you put to death. You do this, you have to pay a small fine. You do this, you're put to death. So it's not like you break any law, you've broken the whole thing. They all have their own separate penalties, even though most of them are death.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
And we find out later in Leviticus that death doesn't even necessarily mean death. You can redeem yourself if you've been condemned to die for whatever reason. You can buy yourself off of the priests.
Yeah, I wonder how they reconcile the fact. Okay, let's just say that fine. Let's grant them the argument and say that if you do any of these things to a slave, that you are to be put to death. But also, like you can put unruly children. You can also take them to a gate and throw rocks at them until they die. I wonder how they, you know what I mean? How do they make that make sense together?
Oh, I'm sure it's one of those, for the good of the people kind of thing. One child out of every generation gets stoned to death and the rest learn to be respectful.
I mean, I guess, but geez,
it's
kids,
the
man.
Canaanites and their child sacrifice that was wrong.
Yes, So it's so easy to go off on side tangents, but I did find where they're at. It's Leviticus 24:22. So they're reading from Leviticus here. Anyone who takes the life of a human being, human being, and this is the NIV. It does say, so they might be using. Oh no, they're using the like New Standard, whatever. But
New American or something like that.
oh wow! Anyone who takes the life of someone's animal must make restitution. Life for life. Okay. So if you kill somebody's ox, they get to kill one of your oxes?
Or they get one of your oxes to replace their ox.
Okay.
I suppose that would be up to the judges, because there's a lot of stuff in here that you're supposed to bring before the judges. Like the thing about how if you get into a fist fight and accidentally hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth early, the fine is whatever the husband demands and the judges deem reasonable.
Yeah, that was in Exodus, I do believe. Okay, I'm just going to read this real quick. Anyone who takes the life of a human being is to be put to death. Anyone who takes the life of someone's animal must make restitution, life for life. Anyone who injures their neighbor is to be injured in the same manner. I mean, is that accidental? Like, what if, you know what I mean? I wonder. Again, side tangent, but fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. The one who has inflicted the injury must suffer this. This is terrible. This is a terrible
Pretty
moral
barbaric.
system. This is awful. And this supposedly came from a god. Goodness gracious. The one who has inflicted injury must, okay, whoever kills an animal must make restitution, but whoever kills a human being is to be put to death. You are to have the same law for the foreigner and the nation and the native born. I am the Lord your God. So, I mean, yeah, if they're trying to say that this applies to slaves, they need more to back that up than simply just saying, well, yeah, this also applies to slaves. In my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, because this section, it's just like Moses had like a verbal ejaculation about random laws in response to a question about a dude who blasphemed. He doesn't even talk about slaves in this part.
Yeah. It so clearly doesn't, not that, like, again, and I'll say it again, not that it matters. It doesn't matter if this applied to slaves or not, because it doesn't address the issue of owning slaves in the first place, but it definitely does not. I mean, is he making the argument that if you have prisoners of war, which he addressed prisoners of war a lot in the last video, is he making the argument that you are not to injure a prisoner of war? You are to treat them with dignity and respect?
I highly doubt it.
Yeah.
My guess is he's going for a really long dance around to basically say, this isn't American slavery. Cool, but there's still slavery.
You are correct. And that was a prediction that I had made in the first video. And sure enough, they hit it in the first video. But yes, you are correct. They're trying to distance themselves from that, so they can. Yeah, they're setting up all these dominoes. So at the end, they can knock it all down and be like, oh, see, it's not American slavery at all.
It's moral slavery. Ethical slavery.
The good kind of slavery, yeah.
I think you got to switch the window back.
If a man injures his
There we go.
neighbor, so it shall be done for him. To do what? Fracture for fracture, eye for eye.
Yeah, so essentially what he's doing is using the word neighbor and slave interchangeably.
Which is obviously nonsense.
Tooth for tooth. And the same language is going to appear over in Exodus 21. And what it's saying there is you really can't go out and abuse people, anyone, whether they be slave or free.
Again, great, fine. I will not spend any more time dealing with this. Fine. You can't just abuse them however you want. Okay, great.
Can't just go injure people. If you do, you take them to the judges, and the judges are going to say, if we take this just flat out literally, the same thing has to happen to you. Now, personally, if I were a judge, I would have a hard time saying, okay, you got in a fight and poked this guy eyes out, so we're going to go poke your eye out. The point of it's clear.
Right.
It has to be equal, and it has to be equal for everybody, including bond slaves.
Well, and I think the recompense here,
Which Exodus completely contradicts. If you did, to use his example, poke the eyes out of a slave, the slave goes free, and that's the end of it. You don't suffer the same penalty, which shows they don't have the same law. And this entire argument, I mean, they're reading so much into the text. They couldn't have missed that passage, which means they're deliberately ignoring it because they're deliberately misleading their viewers.
Yes, they have to.
I believe Ray Comfort would call a loy.
Yeah, so they are deliberately, and I'm going to guess that they're putting this in early because he says he's going to go through these passages line for line. So when he gets to that point, I'm making a prediction. When he gets to that point, he's going to have, when it says you can beat your slaves, he's going to have a different excuse. He's not going to refer back to this point at all. He's going to pretend like he never said any of this. And there will be a large gap between this and when he talks about, he's not going to go from this where he talks about how everything is equal and then jump immediately to the Exodus where you can beat your slaves. I guarantee it. There will be a gap in between those two passages.
Yep, we're gonna get some anecdotes thrown in there for good measure.
Oh yeah.
Here is the recompense has to be equal. I mean, if you put somebody else's eye out, you're risking putting them to death. If you chop off their hand or something like that, if that was the penalty, eye for an eye type of thing, you risk having them die because of bleeding to death and stuff. So I think in general, here in regards to some of these other ones, at least it's a recompense that is equal to whatever the offense was. And the word here that's also used in chapter 19 when it says injured, it says literally give a blemish. And in part 1, you had mentioned about that there were rules that even down to the bruises that were given. This is one of those. This is that situation here. Even if they would give a bruise or something, there was supposed to be some sort of a recompense or repayment.
Yes. So you can't just
If
go out
you
and injure people.
beat your slave with a rod and they don't die within a day or two, you
Yeah,
will be held blameless.
You can't. You got to keep that part quiet. That's the quiet part. You can't talk about that part. I'm curious what they're gonna say, but I still hold to my previous prediction that when they go over that, they're gonna have some type of different excuse that you couldn't beat them terribly, that it was a good thing that you had to keep your slaves in line somehow. It was more of like a tap on the wrist. They'll do something different completely.
People, our friends, the skeptics and the atheists, get a lot of mileage out of where we're going next, which is Exodus 21, is going to be saying, oh, you can.
I was wrong. I stand corrected. He is going to go immediately into it. Okay. All right. Hey, you know what? I'm excited now because this actually might be something new. Is he going to say that if they were to beat their slaves, that then the slave owner would also have to be beaten?
They would be a neat trick. It's discouraging a little bit that there aren't any Christians around today with the balls to just outright say, yeah, this is what the Bible says, therefore slavery is good. None of them even try.
No, and the ones
False
that
Christians.
do, the ones, it's a double-edged sword because in one regard, the ones that would say that because they exist are usually the most disgusting people that you could possibly imagine. Mm-hmm. The ones who are actively calling for the death of LGBT people, the ones who are, picket funerals, that group of people, while they are the most disgusting sect of Christianity, they are at least the most biblically accurate.
Just go out, and as long as you don't murder them, you can abuse the slave, beat them half to death. Well, no.
Yeah.
No, see, I'm catching what he's saying here, and this is common that you can beat them. Usually, they say you can beat them within an inch of their life, and they go, "No, you can't beat them within an inch of their life," and then that's what they focus on, not the fact that you can beat them at all, but that you can't beat them within an inch of their life.
Yeah.
So. It's an argument that I just grant. Okay, fine, you can't beat them within an inch of their life, but you can still beat them. You know what I mean? I mean, to what degree doesn't really matter. You can still beat them.
Yeah, it's just like Frank Turek with his famous, oh, well, without God, then what tells you that murdering babies for fun isn't okay? He has to add that for fun on there, and he thinks it's such a clever fucking gotcha. But he opens up a big door to a giant fucking weakness. He opens up his plate mail armor and reveals his bare chest. And all you have to do is say, why did you say for fun? Because the Bible tells you to kill babies. He can't deny that.
Frank is something. Frank's a different breed of apologist. And I don't think Frank gets enough discredit. No, I'm side tangenting.
That's a mega tangent.
Yeah, Frank Turek is an entire video series. You are right. All right.
The Mosaic law is very clear. If you injure anyone, whether they be slave or free, then you go before a judge and they say this punishment has to be equal.
Oh, so
No,
okay,
they
he
do
really
not.
is. He really is
Well, he's
going.
it's his own. I got lectured last time, so it's eisegesis, exegesis. It's one of those two where he's projecting his own values into the text. And we've seen that a little bit already. The way he's assuming where it says man, it means person, or where it talks about free citizens, and he thinks it means all humans because he understands from a modern perspective that the slaves are humans too. That's a relatively new concept. Up until the fucking 19th century, it was assumed that an enslaved person was not fully human. They were an animal with a few more cognitive skills than like a sheepdog. These ones can speak and go to church and shit, but they're still animals.
Yeah, yeah. I am a bit dumbfounded. I was kind of joking when when I thought when I said he was going to say that if you beat your slave, then whatever beating you put on your slave, that you would have to suffer as well. I was kind of joking, but he actually said it. So there's a rule that explicitly says that you can beat your slave, but also if you do beat your slave, you're going to be beaten as well.
Yeah, 404 error on that one.
Good boy. Wow. Okay.
Just because somebody owes you money and you have them under a bond obligation doesn't mean I can go beat them up. And that passage we just read said that.
And the other point in regards to that there's one judgment for everyone, what that also means is that class doesn't come into it. In other words, just
Yes, the ancient Israelites were definitely not a classist society.
Oh,
No doubt about that. What is
there's more. Since I have King James open, we're going back to traditional values. That passage about beating a slave, it's a little bit different in King James. It says, if a man smites his slave with a rod, and the slave dies under his hand, he shall be punished. Again, not killed, just punished. 21 is notwithstanding, if he continue a day or two, he shall not be punished, for the slave is his money.
yeah.
So, not the modern versions that say if the slave recovers in a day or two, it's fine. That's not what that says. You can beat them, and as long as they don't die while you're actively beating them, you don't get punished. And if they don't die immediately, you can continue to beat them for a day or two and not be punished. It's not dying within a day or two. It's being beaten for 2 solid days. But that's the limit. No more than 2 days of continuous torture.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Such a
at least
moral code.
At least there is. It's so silly. I mean, again, a double-edged sword here, where in one point it's so ridiculous that it's almost it's a difficult concept for me to grasp, as never have been a religious person. I don't understand how people can. It's almost silly, but I don't want to, you know what I mean? I don't want to call it silly, but it feels silly. But at the same time, it's important.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
important to cover.
I mean, Steve here, he's fucking, he's double thinking so hard, he keeps driving himself cross-eyed. Like, the cognitive dissonance is off the damn charts here.
Yeah, I mean, it so clearly says that you're allowed to beat them, but then he in the next sentence, which I did not expect, I thought they were going to put this in a much later part of the video, but he did it right away. I mean, after explaining how you can't beat people, he goes right into the passage that explains how you can beat people. It's
because you might be a
it's
rich
something
person
else.
that has property, whether it's flocks or something else like that. No, you're also going to be judged as well. So again, this is in relation to other nations that were around where people of class, upper class, they weren't under the same judgment. There were two different types of judgment. If you were in the part that was part of the royalty, or if you were part of the part that had money or wealth, you might be able to injure other people and never have to pay for it. No, this is saying is it doesn't matter. There's one judgment for everybody. Doesn't matter whether it's the stranger, the class, anything else like that. There's going to have to be.
All right.
Let's talk about all the other countries around, and not what the Bible. This is supposed to be about the slavery in the Bible. What?
Yeah.
What the fuck is it? We thought we were tangenting badly. Holy crap!
Yeah.
Also, his little pop-up reminds me, if you're watching this and you've made it to this 45-minute mark, why not hit that subscribe button?
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's something that I never do in my videos. I mean, you'll see like one or two where I say it, but I always forget to say it. And I think one of the best way to get people to subscribe is to simply ask people to subscribe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of times some people get mad about how every video asks, but there's a lot of people, if you don't give them that reminder, it doesn't even occur to them to hit the button.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of buttons, why not hit that thumbs up while you're at it? And leave a comment, because it helps the algorithm, and, channels kind of need that to grow. So, your efforts are appreciated.
Yes, absolutely. Very much so. Very much so. I'm just gonna grant them this argument. Fine, you can't beat them. You can't kill them. I don't care. Let's just say that it says it. It so obviously does not. But again, it's a side tangent to the actual matter of owning other human beings as property, and that's what I really want to get into. So I won't speak on it anymore. I think we've kind of ran the course on the fact. So I'm granting it to them. I'm giving it to them. Fine, you can't beat them. You can't kill them. You have to give them a 10-course meal every single day. They get foot rubs. they get free housing. They get all the food they could ever
now
want.
I want to be a slave in Israel.
yeah. Fine.
Master
they get
give
all
me
of
a
the great
spouse and shit, and
Yeah. You just can never leave the house ever. You know what I mean? Like, freedom, I think, is probably the most valuable thing anybody can have. I mean, that's the second to last ultimate punishment is to take away your freedom, and then the ultimate one would be to take away your life. I mean, there's only, you know what I mean? There's only one thing worse than losing your freedom, and that's dying altogether. So losing your freedom is all that matters to me when we're dealing with slavery.
Yeah. So I agree. Whenever he brings up other unrelated nonsense, we can just say, sure, fine, skip.
Because
Get to your point,
matter.
dude.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because if we don't do that, this is going to be like a 14-hour video. So we'll keep going.
A judgment made on it.
And most cultures in most days have different sets of standards for the wealthy and the poor people. And God here is saying, no, everybody will be treated the same. Now, over in Exodus 21, Steve, read the first 4 verses of Exodus 21, because this whole chapter has a fair amount of info here on slavery.
Now these are the ordinances which you are to set before them. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve for 6 years, but on the 7th he shall go out as a free man without payment. If he comes alone, he shall go out alone. If he is the husband of a wife, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall belong to her master, and he shall go out alone.
So with that, it says there in the first part, if you buy a Hebrew slave, right? It says right there in verse 2, if you buy a Hebrew slave.
Does.
So our friends that make the accusations against the Bible get a lot of mileage right there. Doesn't it say buy a Hebrew slave? Again, we just spent a whole session last time talking about all the various reasons why there would be a monetary exchange there for a bond slave. People owe money, various other reasons, and we spent a whole session on that.
They did spend an entire session in the last video describing all the ways you can sell yourself. You can sell your freedom or have your freedom taken away in slavery or servitude. They did do that. It was all grossly immoral, but they did do it.
So in this case, just real briefly, so in this case, it might be where it says, if you buy, it might be the case of just one example.
Hey, it might be. It might be the case. You never know. You never know. It might be the case.
Of where the person needs to give a repayment, and so they're going to that person and saying, I'm going to go work for you in order to pay this back. It's termed here buying, but in essence, it's that person saying, I'm going to repay the debt that I owe you by going into a servitude to you.
He raises an interesting point. all the apologists make this case that, oh, well, you're selling yourself into slavery because you're actually doing an indenture to pay off the debt or whatever. He's saying no, because the text says buy a Hebrew slave, not take on their debt, pay off someone else, not take them on to forgive their loan. You buy them. So all these apologetics about the I don't want to starve to death bullshit doesn't apply. It's all irrelevant to this point.
So it does and it doesn't, because in the first, essentially what he's doing is changing the meaning of buy to include that type of indentured servitude where they sell themselves. He's completely mutilating the meaning of the word buy. The first video would make it make sense, but he's just including all of the ways that you just described about selling yourself to pay off a debt or he's just including all of that. That's why he said it could be, when they say buy, it could mean, it could be this, it could be that.
And it's also fascinating that they spent an entire hour-long video or whatever talking about all these exceptions and exclusions and mitigating factors which don't actually address the issue. And now they're spending a chunk of time in the second video instead of first dude, tall, skinny guy, who has a fabulous hat, by the way, just referenced the fact that they're in the first video so that they could move along. And Steve over here is like, yeah, let's rehash the entire last video.
Yeah.
Or if in the case of, like we showed in Genesis or different places, if people are starving to death,
Yeah.
and they're wanting to sell themselves in order to get food, then
Do you see what I'm saying? He's saying everything he's describing right now. He's saying this is what they could have meant by the word buy. It all doesn't matter.
it lays out limits on that.
But the point being here is there's not a slave market somewhere where they're going out and say, honey, I think I'm going to go down to the slave market and buy me a slave today.
Well,
Yeah. Jeez Louise. Okay.
that's
Actually,
a bold assumption.
That is a very bold assumption. But again, okay, fine. Let's say that there's not a slave market, which in Israel, specifically regarding Israelites, there probably wasn't a slave market. But that's not. Firstly, it's irrelevant, and secondly, that is a bold assumption. But I want to bring back. I'm gonna bring back By Golly Gee Whiz. Small Steve said that in the last video, and I don't know why I found it so funny. He's like, by golly gee, I mean, he said it as if it's in his regular vocabulary. It was funny.
That's not what this is talking about.
Correct. That's not the case. And it says in
He asserts with confidence.
verse 2, on the 7th year he shall go out as a free man without payment. In the 7th year he shall go out as a free man. They were bond slaves because they owed a debt.
Right.
Yeah, doesn't say that.
Yeah, I'm curious. So they just read 6 lines, and then now they're moving on to a different section completely. Maybe they'll address it. We're only 13 minutes in, which, good Lord, we have to stop going on so many tangents. But maybe they'll address it. But are they going to completely gloss over where the fact that the women and children stay as slaves? They didn't address that at all. They went right into the next thing.
The man goes free, and then there's that whole section about selling your children into slavery because it's voluntary that way.
Yeah. So we haven't gotten there yet, to be fair, but they did just completely gloss over the. They read 6 lines and addressed the first one.
Will go out even if the amount of the debt was more than you think 7 years of labor was. You still have to let him go. Right, so yes, the debt will get paid up to 6 years. On the 7th year, you had to let him go. And so what you can't do is say, oh, you owe me, you owe me, you owe me. And so again, that would limit the amount of money that a lender was going to loan to someone, because they're not going to loan anymore. Then I can get 7 years of labor back out of this person.
Right.
And so that puts very humane limits on this whole idea of this bond slave idea.
Humane slavery, yeah.
Of having this obligation where somebody owns my time.
And the point there at the last part of 2 where it says without payment is talking about, okay, well, he might not have worked off his debt. Whenever he's let free, he can't go and say, oh, but you need to pay me. Well, no, you haven't finished. You're actually haven't even worked off all your debt. I'm legally bound to let you go, but I'm not going to pay you in order for thinking you still owe me money. So that's what that second part there is dealing with as well.
Right, so
Isn't there
Not
further
really.
rules? Isn't there further rules in Leviticus that when they do finally get their freedom, speaking of Hebrew slaves, that you're supposed to give them, you are supposed to give them payment so they don't fall right back into
Sort
slavery?
of. There's it again. It depends on a lot of different circumstances, but there are passages talking about how when they go out, you're not supposed to let them leave empty-handed. You're supposed to
Yeah.
give them a mule and like a picnic basket and I don't know, a fucking blowjob, whatever.
Whatever they
You
need,
give
yeah.
them a bunch of goodies and send them on their way. But there's also passages, and they may be in Leviticus. I'm only partway through Leviticus in my own Bible study, but they're around there somewhere, that say when your relatives can actually buy you back. They can buy out your indenture contract if it is an indenture situation, which this is only one possibility. This isn't always the case. The judges can convict you of a crime and sentence you to slavery, and then they do have a slave market in the fucking town square where they auction your ass off. If your penalty is 6 years or 7 years or whatever. But I digress. If you do wind up going into an indenture situation, your relatives can buy you free for an amount based on the amount that you owed and how many years are left on your contract and how useful a worker you are. There's a different price for inside workers and outside workers. There's a different price for people over 25. It's fucking trippy.
Yeah, yeah. They put a lot of time. Well, not they. I think it's important to make the distinction that God put a lot of time into slavery and how He wants it regulated. But I'm curious if they will in the later video they'll try to bring up those rules where it says that you don't leave them empty. You don't let them go empty-handed, because He just stated that they're not going to pay the slave after he leaves.
So God is putting humane limits on these obligations. The person loaning the money still gets their money, but he's going to say, okay, you can't abuse this to where, human nature being what it is, where people would take advantage of it.
And the person that owes a debt can't abuse it either.
Right. And you know what it reminds me of, Steve? Over in
Hey, Nitty. Hey, Nitty, if you're still here, I can't see how many people are actually in chat, but I just saw your comments, and you get the privilege, the honor of being the first comment that I click on to see if it shows up on the screen. Here we go. Hey, look at that. You're welcome, Nitty.
All right.
Greatest apologist superpower, huh?
Yeah, Whitney commented earlier, but maybe it was before the stream started, so it's not showing up in the live chat.
Yeah, no, I saw that, but I saw it much, much later. I saw it just a few minutes ago. That's actually my fiance, so she popped in, but she's definitely sleeping by now.
I see.
Yeah. All right. I hope she's sleeping by now. Nitty. All right, let's keep going here.
in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7, it is a verse that we've all thrown around. The borrower is the slave of the lender. Borrower is the slave of the lender. Now, you and I, when we think of that, we think in terms of just, okay, they're the slave in a figurative sense. And I submit that that's what really happens, really, is that it's not a figurative statement. When you borrowed money in those days, you became the slave of the lender because they could exact the money from you, that you will pay it back. But again, God is so humane here in this section that He
That
puts
is
limits
so
on it.
humane. So
Yeah.
he raises an interesting point that I hadn't even considered. Like with modern loans, if you default on your loan, whatever you bought with the loan, they can repossess it. I was a repo agent for 3 years. I steal back people's cars and airplanes, and there's a different process for houses, but you can steal back anything that isn't paid off. If you borrow an unsecured loan in ancient Israel, your ass is the collateral. So, yeah, that's another way a person could become enslaved, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's what makes this person, Little Steve. That's what makes this so so sad because he did address that in the last video, and the video that we did together when Matt Dillahunty, he nailed it, that it breaks his heart. This little Steve is the person that's breaking Matt Dillahunty's heart. This is what he was talking about, because he just seems like a nice guy. He's probably a good guy. But in his last video, he literally references children as money. So if you said that like their ass would be on the line if they weren't able to pay it back. But if they died, it was their children who were on the line. And he just says it with just carefree. He just says that, yeah, they'll come and take your kids to pay back the father's debt if the father can't pay it back. And it's disgusting.
Rumpelstiltskin that shit. They're gonna steal your firstborn.
Now, in verse
Yeah,
4,
literally.
it talks there about if the wife was owned by the master and the 7 years are up for him but not for her, she has to wait for the 7 years.
Right.
Right? So that's the point here, is that it's not saying that
No. No.
Yeah, I'm like,
no.
that's not what it says.
That's not what not okay. I mean, even if that is what it says, that's still pretty awful because it's putting women in a lower class, which the Bible never does. But that's not what it says. That's not what it says. I mean, if that was what it said, then the later rules about the master, why would the slave want to go back to the master for life to be with his wife and children if the woman was to go free at the 7th year? Why would he give himself, why would he sell himself into a lifetime of slavery instead of just waiting for his wife and kids to finish up their 7-year debt and be with them free somewhere? You know what I mean? Good. No,
Yeah,
that's not
'cause
what that says.
He might have to wait another 2 years or something, but that's clearly not what's happening. And we see in other sections of the law, female slaves aren't covered by this. They have their own rules. Like, women are always owned by someone. Somebody has to be holding the leash. Even if they're not technically a slave and it's just their husband, some man owns every single woman. So there is no going free from that.
Yeah. No. Oh my goodness. So it's generic apologetics, but every once in a while this guy just drops a lie so so blatant that it's almost shocking. I mean, he's saying, okay, we're gonna keep going because it's just it's frustrating. I mean, I appreciate the fact that it's new because I don't think I've ever heard any person say nobody addresses this, and there's a good reason why nobody addresses this, because it's very difficult to address. So I will give him credit that he's actually addressing it, but it's not any better if you address it and then just clearly lie about it to say that the man shall go free, but the woman shall not go free, and then say that, well, yeah, but she will go free after 7 years. It's just such a blatant lie. Okay.
I don't even know if the intent is to lie. It's smelling to me a lot like red herrings. Like, he keeps throwing out red herrings, and sure enough, we keep chasing him down the damn trail when it's not actually addressing the point of there being slavery in the book.
It is true. So I think what he's going for is he's never going to say that the biblical slavery is immoral or that it's wrong. He's giving justifications for all the nuances, all these micro rules of it, and he's trying to make slavery sound like it wasn't that bad.
Oh, yeah. He and Steve especially has thrown in some of those flavor words, like, this is humane slavery.
Humane slavery, yeah. I can't get over the fact that he just said that.
It's just like someday there will be Americana apologists, people who long after this empire has fallen, they'll be like, oh, well, the American way was the best way, and people will be like, well, why do you say that? They were so barbaric, they still had executions, and they'll say, oh, but they were humane executions.
Humanely executed, yeah, you're right. Goodness.
owned by the master and the 7 years are up for him but not for her, she has to wait for the 7 years.
Right.
right? So
No,
that's the point
no.
here, is that it's not.
No, sorry, I gotta disagree with you, Ember. I don't. Well, it is a red herring. It's a blatant lie. He's lying, and he knows it, and you can see it in his wrinkly eyeballs right now.
Not saying that, oh, this woman is the permanent property. No, because she's under the same rule. We read that a while ago, right? Everybody has to be treated the same. And so she has the 7-year obligation as well. And you can't morally say, oh, I got married and we had kids, so I don't have to pay my debt back. No, she has to stay and work her debt off too. Just because she gets married and has kids.
Yeah, if that were even remotely true, there'd be another provision saying if the wife's term comes up first, then she can go to the master and say, I love my husband.
Yeah,
It's not there because that never happens because it's never a separate term.
Yeah, no, no, no.
You can't say that the debt's forgiven. So what it's saying there in that passage, if somebody's 7 years are up and they've fallen in love and they've married someone and had children, then the man.
Well, that's a nice way to put if the master gives him a wife.
Fallen in love.
Yeah, that's a
Here,
very
fuck my maid. Do as
a
you're
very
told,
poetic-
slave, or I'll beat you with a rod for 2 days.
But I won't kill you. Don't worry. Oh my goodness. Wow.
He has to
Alright.
wait until the lady has the 7-year obligation up because she owed hers too. It's not saying that, oh, you're just, the owner's going to go sell her for a profit. That's not
He
what it's saying.
might.
Right. And it's also in verse 4 there, if the master gives him a wife. In other words, it's also while he's there working off this debt, this is a situation to where he has the ability to be married and ability to have a family and
I mean, yeah, he does have the ability to be married. He does have the ability to have a family, but the wife doesn't. That's it's not her choice.
Mm-hmm.
If the master gives him a wife,
children as well. And there's other parts that we're going to read here in a little bit that he has options as well at this particular point in time, whether to stay or whether to leave. And now that
he has options as well.
Options.
It's so nice. God, this God.
Why, he's practically free. He can choose.
Wow.
he's got a family and a wife.
And this is why we spent so much time.
I'm curious what they're going to say about that because they just said that the wife will be free after 7 years. So I'm in what? Firstly, why aren't the kids to go free? Is their contract not up?
Yeah, that's another good point. Under his eisegesis or whatever the fuck the term is, if you have a child in year 1 and then a child in year 3, the first child's term is up when they turn 7, but the other child is only 5. So the second child is going to be slave all by its lonesome when the whole rest of the family is already free. That makes total sense.
But under what circumstance would the 1-year-old be under any contract in the first place? Why wouldn't so the man is a slave and the woman is a slave. They get together. The master gives the wife to the slave, and they have kids. Why are those kids under any type of contract? If the man has a child in year 6, why wouldn't the children go free with the man? That's one question.
And this is one of the tricky biscuits where the apologists are lying to you about the other kinds of slavery where they're not mentioning them. The children are the master's property permanently, male, female, whatever. They are owned property of the master. So the master can sell them.
Absolutely.
And this is how you make lifelong slaves. Now, of course, you could argue that everybody goes free in the year of Jubilee every 50 years or whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
Fine, I suppose. But
Yeah.
you can make more slaves who will be useful, ownable for 48 years, and useful for 42 of those before they finally go free at the age of 49.
Yeah.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, and it's
how merciful.
Yeah, and it's every 50 years. So I heard the argument, and I don't recall who made it, but it was really good. So okay, so if it's the 45th year, that person would only be a slave for 5 years. Well, then the slave owners wouldn't buy slaves that close to the year of Jubilee. They would just wait 5 more years until so they can have their full 50 years with the slave. But they haven't gotten in. I'm sure they will get into that and try to make it sound like it's some amazing thing. But under what, I mean, before I got off into that tangent, under what circumstance? Like, I mean, I know I just said it, but they're going into it. If the woman is to go free, let's just say that she's 6.5 years into her 7-year term. Why would you ever give your entire life to the slave master instead of just waiting those 6 months so you can all be free together? Well, the answer is obvious because that's not how this worked at all. The woman just never went free, but we'll keep going.
Last time, with this whole idea of the debtor and the bond slave, it is immoral. At least in in this day, the people's mind, it is immoral not to pay the debt back because people will come up with excuses. Oh, I went broke, et cetera, et cetera. I don't owe the money anymore. And we allow that. And to their mind, they'd say this, how could you let somebody get out without paying their debt? That's immoral. And so that's what's going on here. It's not saying it's permanently gone. It's just saying it has to hang around until she's worked off her 7 years. Now, the next one, starting at verse 7. And
Yeah,
It doesn't fucking say that.
It doesn't.
And also, it's not a matter of morality if you pay off your debt or not. If you fail to pay off your debt, there are in other parts of the Bible legally prescribed penalties for that too, including being enslaved against your will.
Yeah. It's just lies.
going down to 11. Steve, could you read those verses?
If a man sells his daughter as a female slave, she is not to go free as the male slaves do.
There
If
it
she
is.
displeased-
Female slaves do not go free as the male slaves do.
Yeah, it says it's frustrating and it's
Yeah, they
it
spend the
makes you
last
wanna
10
yell.
minutes talking about how it's the same law for male and female slaves. And then the very next thing they read
Yeah.
is there are different rules for the female slaves.
I mean, not even the very
Motherfucker.
next, not even the very next thing. They were explaining how the rules are different for women and men, as they were saying how it's all the same. And then the next, it's so clearly not the same. You just, my guess is that it's going to be some type of what they're going into now is going to be some type of like how great it must have been to have that option. Do you want your daughter to starve to death, or do you want to give her to a guy for 7 years who's going to treat her lovely like family, and then leave out all the disgusting things that make a female slave family? That's my guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
pleasing in
yeah,
the
because the very next verse, which he's probably about to read, or maybe he'll skip it over, who the fuck knows, because he skipped a couple that were kind of important, but whatever.
Kind of important, yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, it's only
Like
7
if
year
she
term,
is,
and then,
yeah. All right.
But yeah, the displeasing in the eyes who designated her for himself. What do you suppose that means?
Yeah. Yeah.
It
So
it isn't about cleaning the dishes and dusting the fucking awnings and whatnot.
right, and I think one of the worst things I've ever heard somebody say is that these female slaves were family members. No. They said it was more like adoption. It was
Yes.
like adoption.
I always adopt my concubines.
Yes, it was more like adoption for a daughter. Oh man, I was furious when I can't remember which apologist said that, but this was just a system of adoption where a father sells his daughter into slavery, and if she's not pleasing the master, then he can give them to his son, and if his son doesn't want her, then so verse 9 here says, if he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her according to the custom of daughters. And that's why he said it was more like adoption. But that's after the father has already used her and she's not pleasing him anymore. And then if the son doesn't want her anymore, he's got to give her he's got to set her free back into the starvation that she was sold to prevent in the first place. It's all so stupid, but again, tangents.
eyes of her master who designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He does not have authority to sell her to a foreign people because of his unfairness to her. If he designates her for his son, he shall deal with her according to the custom of daughters. If he takes to himself another woman, he may not reduce her food, her clothing, or her conjugal rights. If he will not do these three things for her, then she shall go out for nothing without payment of money.
So
Yes.
what undergirds all of this, and one of the reasons
So,
again, we spent
Yeah, isn't it?
so one of the things the Bible actually does say about the people of Canaan that made them so wicked they had to be annihilated, and it was moral to do so, was that they had made a religious rite out of prostitution. And here is the actual fucking Holy Scripture telling you how to whore out your own daughters. If your
Yeah.
daughter isn't getting laid by her new pimp daddy, she gets to leave.
Yes.
For
no,
fuck's sake.
No. You just put it in a less you put it in a better light than it actually is, because if she's not pleasing the pimp daddy, the son gets to have a turn. Then she gets the boot. After, God, it's disgusting. Like that's so gross. But yeah, let's see how he's going to defend this.
so much time last time is because the context here and all the other laws are vastly important. First passage we read, all the punishments for murder, kidnapping, cursing of parents, assault, causing someone to lose work time, all those laws have to be treated the same for every human.
They do
that
not.
undergirds all of the
Yeah, which is what? So okay, no, never mind. Side tangent.
these
We're not
things
doing it.
that, like this passage in Exodus 21. In this case, this man sells a daughter. Now, on just the face of it, my modern mind looks at that and says, how horrendous could you get if a father sold a daughter? But what did we see last time? Multiple reasons why
Starvation.
that might be the case.
He's
Some
gonna
of which
say it.
might be what?
Well,
Starvation.
starvation. Feed
Yeah,
your
okay,
family.
we got it.
You can't
Yeah.
feed your children, so it might be a case where he's putting his daughter into servitude to be taken care of.
And also in here, if you just look at the passage, they're talking about getting married. They're talking about getting married here.
No. No,
Yeah.
you don't. This is a thing that a lot of Christians conflate, where if it says conjugal rights, they're clearly boning. That's what that means. Therefore, it means marriage. Au contraire, I assure you, my friend, you can in fact have sex without being married. It works just fine.
Yeah. Oh, goodness, it's so bad. All right, I'm gonna give him a few more minutes here.
So I look at bride price as saying this is awful, you're selling a human being. Many cultures don't. Many cultures say this is a normal, expected thing for money to change hands at the point when a man gives up his daughter to get married.
Well, and then also, as it says there in verse 7, she is not to go free as the male slaves do. So that's one thing that the skeptics pick up on too. Oh, she's different than the man. No, if you go and read it, there's actually rights that are going to be given to her. In other words, if he's there and the man that
It is
she's
different
going
from the
to-
man. The male doesn't get to go free if he's deprived of conjugal rights with the master.
Yeah.
In fact, I
Yeah.
dare say, many of the male slaves are rather glad of that fact. Not all
Yeah.
of them. I'm sure some wouldn't mind, but you know.
And I've always wondered this question, and of course, someone like you and I think realistically everybody really knows the answer to it. These guys would never say it, but I think we both know the answer to this question. But I would love to hear an apologist say it. Why is it the daughters that can be sold and not the sons to avoid starvation? Curious.
Yeah, and that's another good point. Is like they make the case, oh well, it's like giving your daughter to someone else so that she's taken care of. No, you sell your daughter as a sex toy to a rich bitch, and you get money for it because that's how selling works.
Yeah.
And you use the money to feed your other children, or buy a yacht, whatever. The law doesn't specify that.
It does. It doesn't specify it. And there's so the starvation thing that you have to read that into the text. It doesn't say this. You can literally just sell your if you just don't want. She's annoying you, whatever the reason may be, but it's just it's gross. The
Oh,
reason
yeah,
why
yeah.
they would sell their daughters
And
and not their
that's
sons,
absolutely
but-
a thing that's continued through the culture until relatively recently, where parents would say, you know, you're disobeying me, you're disrespectful. I will sell you to X. Sometimes it's the circus, sometimes it's the church, whatever. That's a phrase that's still in our culture, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Doesn't want to marry her, or the son says doesn't want to marry her. What it's saying is you just can't put her out as you do a male. No,
It
It
Yes,
does.
it does. Yes, it does. I really think he's mistaken here. I don't think because it so clearly says that. I really do believe that he's mistaken here. I think what he means is that you have to give the women marital rights, but that's only if the son keeps her, if you want to put it that way. Then she's to get the daughters.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
he's misspeaking here.
Yeah, technically, from a legal standpoint, if they fail to provide her with
Yes,
the
yeah,
food,
yeah.
with the clothing, and with the conjugal authority, if she
Yeah.
doesn't get laid when she wants to get laid, and it's specifically under the circumstance that the master or son or whatever takes on another slave. If he keeps boning both of them, neither one gets to leave. But you can't put her
Yeah.
out. It's her choice to go if she isn't getting boned or getting new clothes.
Yeah. I think he's slightly misspeaking there because you absolutely, if he does not provide her with these three things, she is to go free without any payment of money. So literally all he has to do is ignore her completely, and she is to go free without payment of money. So I think he just misspoke there a little bit.
Got to switch the window back again.
But yeah, so he's misspeaking. Yes, you can absolutely put her out. Specifically, if you don't want to marry her, then you can put her out.
The stream window is still on the Bible pages.
she's
Thank
not
you,
property. Is
thank
really
you.
what it's saying.
Right.
You have to treat her differently and in a better way than you would a male. Is actually what this is saying.
Oh, a better way.
Yeah, so okay, for a moment, let's just ignore reality and say that it was in a better way than the male. What happened to all of this equality that he was just going on about?
Yes,
Well, it's equal,
better.
but it's
Look at
different rules. But also it's equal. But also it's actually kind of better. Even though she literally has to put out.
Yeah, how is it better? She's being sold. Let's just grant it that she's being sold to avoid starvation. The purchaser doesn't want her. The son doesn't want her. She gets the boot, and she's right back into a worse position, or at least the same position, assuming that the father takes her back to feed her. It's much worse. It's so much worse. It's
Verse 7 again. If a man sells his daughter as a female ebed, and we made a big deal last time about this term ebed, has a variety of meanings. Our translators here in the New American Standard translated it slave, but hundreds of times that's used as servant, it's used as a bond servant, it's used in a variety of meanings. And so in this case, marriage arrangements weren't done the same way as what we have as this Prince Charming, fall in love with somebody. Marriages were done in different ways. And all this is saying is that if there's an arrangement where a man is giving his daughter to somebody else, it talks about conjugal rights in there. So what can happen? It's rather obviously a marriage arrangement. And what it's saying
He's
is
reading
if
that
there's
in.
this instance where
It's
if
very
money is
obviously
changed hands with the
not
bride price,
marriage.
it's so it's so obviously not. I mean, this is another frustrating thing about doing these apologetics, especially these longer ones, is you just end up repeating yourself so much because they are repeating themselves so much. But I guess that's the way it
then
is.
husband can't take advantage of her, and then if he does, decides that
Can't take advantage of her.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
It's
No.
it's legally codified permissible rape. He can have her whenever the fuck she wants.
Yeah.
She's owned. She gets no say.
Yeah, and then if she's not pleasing him, he just passes her down the line. It's
Yeah,
so
there
gross.
is nothing
It's-
in this code that involves the consent on the part of the woman.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, nothing about this has in any way does it reference marriage. If she is displeasing into the eyes of her master who designated her for himself, saying, "This one is mine," then he shall let her be redeemed. Yeah, it doesn't. Okay, yeah.
look at verse 10. If he
It's not marriage, yes.
takes
It's,
another
it's
wife,
prostitution.
and the other many of the translations translate that wife. This one says woman. If he takes another woman or wife, he may not reduce her food, clothing. It's a list of
Well, how would he take so some translations say wife, but how would he take another wife? Interesting.
Well, remember, this is pre-Solomon, and even in Solomon's era, that dude had 200 wives and another 300 concubines.
yeah.
protection there.
But you know the sacredness of marriage and all that.
Modern eye, especially from our country, looks at this with a sexual atmosphere around it, and that's not the case in every court. They were taking care of the daughter and the wife. This is not a sex slave kind of an arrangement. This
That's
was a
literally all it is, my
husband-
dude. The only duty the woman has in this whole thing is to be available for sex. There is nothing she has to, feed the cows. There's none of this. She has to keep the household clean and tidy or change the fucking sheets. No, the only thing mentioned in the law is the conjugal rights.
Yeah.
It is literally just sex slavery. If she happens to make a sandwich afterwards, that just makes her a better slave, I
bonus.
suppose.
Bonus? Yeah. If you make the sandwich after the sex, then you might not go to the sun afterwards.
That's true.
taking a wife.
Well, and also in verse 8 there it says if they're displeasing to the eyes, her master who designated. In other words, if this was the arrangement, if he goes, no, you know what, I don't want to no longer marry her, or I don't want my son to. There's a provision in here that she can be redeemed back by the family, specifically so that she's not sold to somebody else. Again, just like what you were saying, if a person owed a debt, it was immoral if they didn't pay the debt. No, you got to pay the debt. Well, it's similar here.
So if if you can't afford to feed your daughter, so you sell your daughter, she can be redeemed back by you with all of the money that you have. When you literally sold her because you couldn't afford to feed her.
Plus, depending on the various, the many assortments of categories and things, something between 5 and 25% of the original loan value. You have to pay it back plus interest in order to redeem a human.
Yeah, I'm sure that happened a lot.
No, you have this arrangement in order to marry this woman.
They say this part so casually because they're focusing on the other disgusting aspects of this and trying to defend those, that they just gloss over the fact that this daughter was being sold to a person. Let's just say that it was to be married. How is this okay? They're glossing over the fact that, let's just say that it's not sex, anything to do with sex or anything, and it's just selling your daughter into marriage. Like, we're glossing over how disgusting even that is.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you don't find her attractive, or because of some reason you come up with she doesn't cook right or whatever it might be, you can just do whatever you want to with her now. No, she can be redeemed back by her family.
And again, look at verse 8. He shall let her be redeemed.
Yeah.
Which means he has to let her be taken back by the family.
By the family.
And so that's what it's talking about. And of course, if you're a skeptic or an atheist and you're just looking for ammo to tear down the Bible and you don't want to look at these nuances,
You don't have to look very hard.
Yeah. As you said in the beginning, we can grant all the nuance. It's still fucking slavery.
It's still slavery. Even the best kind of slavery is still slavery.
and you just turn to this and say, oh, selling a daughter, how horrible. No, there's a lot more to it than that. They're taking care of these people. That's the point here. So he has to treat her well.
I want to pause real quick because even I didn't expect. I can go on tangents l- like none other, and
That sounds like a challenge.
well, hey, if you want to know if you want some proof, I'm going on a tangent to explain how often I go on tangents. But I did not quite expect it to run this long. I don't see us like a stream timer, but if any point if you have to jump out, don't feel bad, man. I didn't expect to occupy quite this much of your time. So if you do have to jump out, just let me know and I'll just finish it up.
Yeah, we're all right for right now.
That's what it's saying here.
Okay.
And then in verse 9, he has to treat her, it says, according to the custom of daughters. According to the custom of daughters is what it says in verse 9.
Wow. He completely skipped over the son one. I mean, I know he mentioned it earlier, but he skipped over.
Well,
He-
it's
he has to
part
treat
of
her-
that line. If she gets assigned to the son, then it becomes a daughter-in-law situation. Even though it's not marriage, he has
Yeah.
to treat her as if she were a daughter-in-law.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's nothing in the text so far explaining what the fuck the custom of daughters is. All we've been
Yes.
able to glean so far from the entirety of the text to this point is that if you have a daughter, you can sell them to be whores for another person.
Right.
That is
Yeah.
the custom of daughters thus far.
Thus far, yeah. Can he just sell her? But he went straight from
Hey,
straight
Titan.
from he must let her be redeemed to give her the okay, all right, side
Well, that's what it's saying here. And then in verse 9, he has to treat her, it says, according to the custom of daughters. According to the custom of daughters is what it says in verse 9. Now, that is another one of these things that's, you have to know the context. That phrase, according to the custom of daughters, is a technical legal term that the scholars tell us. It's a phrase that legally means he must treat her like a freeborn person with all rights of citizenship. Again, look at verse 9. He must deal with her according to the custom of daughters.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak to this. I don't know what the custom of daughters is. Again, it's an entire side tangent. It's irrelevant, but I can't speak on it.
And again, don't take my word for it. You can look these up, do the research. The Nuzi letters, N-U-Z-I, an archaeological find from the Nuzi site in northern Iraq, laid out what that phrase means and what it meant. So what it's saying is that if you have this woman and there's some sort of an issue, disagreement, you have to treat her like a free woman. And you have to let her be bought back.
How great could it have been to be treated like a free woman in ancient Israel? I don't think it probably wasn't great. I'm gonna guess.
So our buddy here is quoting when he says that it's a legal term that means to treat as a freeborn woman. He is quoting from an article on the fucking logo's tiny, Brackenhurst Baptist Church from whatever country ends with .za. I don't think that's New Zealand. But anyway, the relevant passage says that verse 9 identifies the possibility that this man has betrothed her to his son and gives the instruction he shall deal with her according to the custom of daughters. A scholar named Ryken notes, apparently at this point the maidservant was only engaged, not married, yet she was welcomed as a full member of the family with all the privileges of a daughter. Currid notes that the phrase according to the custom of daughters is a technical legal phrase meaning to treat as a freeborn woman. However, no citations are provided. Not a verse, not even the paper of the scholar who's making the claim. So he's literally just lifting that unsourced from some random church's website that itself has nothing to back that up.
Yeah. What did we say earlier? His source is
Because I wanna.
Because I wanna. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
has rights. You can't sell her like a piece of property. That's what it's saying. But again, if you're a skeptic or an atheist and they're only looking for something to use against the Bible and don't spend the time to do the research, then you can turn this into something that it's not. That's
Yeah.
Irony. Whee! There it goes. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Yeah. Oops.
what really kind of gets under my skin is they take these passages that specifically laid out to be moral, taking care of.
No, 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 no. Again, I know this is what the 373rd time we've said it. We can grant all of these arguments. We can grant it. Fine, it was a way to take care of them, but it's still not moral. You can't say that selling your daughter, even if that was to prevent her from starving to death, that this is a moral system. That's a repugnant system. That's so awful. If you're a god, why not just say, hey, if people are hungry, give them food? If you're a god, why not just look down at your chosen people and give them food? Why let them get to the point of starvation and slavery in the first place? None of this is moral. Even if it were true, it's still grossly immoral.
A woman, and they turn them into something just polar opposite. Modern Western society is drowning in rampant sexual immorality, and so the skeptic
Ooh, sexual. Okay, all right.
Uh-huh.
Easy, buddy.
see this,
We all know what that means.
and they immediately think sex slaves, and nothing could be further from the truth. These protections are for families that were starving to death and really didn't have any other options. I personally met people that their parents were so impoverished that they had to let their children go. In our case, it was in our country, they gave them away to orphanages because they just couldn't feed them. But in those days, they didn't have orphanages. They had these kind of.
Why not? Why didn't they have orphanages? Why didn't they have a system in place to protect the most vulnerable people in their society? Why didn't they have anything to protect the children aside from slavery?
Yeah. As I've mentioned previously, possibly the last time we did the slavery thing. If you've reached the point where you have to sell yourself or your children into slavery, your society has already failed.
Yeah. And again, all of this stuff makes a lot of sense when you look at it from coming from humans. It really does. I believe all of this coming from humans, but when it starts to not make any sense at all is when it comes from the creator of the universe, which is where these laws directly come from. That's where it starts to make no sense at all. And not just the creator of the universe, but the all-knowing, all-good, all-loving creator of the universe. These are his laws. That's where it makes absolutely no sense.
Okay, related note. I found Curid, John D. Curid, doctor of some religious variety that's not specified. His books are available on Amazon. He has 3 volumes on Exodus, which is just the passages and then commentary. And in the description, it says that Dr. Curid provides solid exegesis in an accessible way. So when he says stuff like, this was a legal term, he's literally making that shit up.
Literally, okay. All right. Well, you shouldn't have done the research and put in whatever he just said.
I know, us damn atheists.
God damn it.
So they would have to do a bride price.
Hey, and if it makes you feel any better, what was it? Exegesis and
Eisegesis.
Eisegesis. I've never heard those words before in my life before you said them on stream. So the fact that you maybe got the two mixed up, don't feel too bad about it.
Yeah. I'm always switching the two. It's a cool. I found a graphic. Exegesis is a critical explanation or interpretation of text, especially scripture. So when you take what's there and then you interpret it, that's exegesis. Eisegesis is when you project your own ideas into the text, like these two are doing.
Yeah. When you said on the last stream, you said it. I was like, and I grabbed my phone down to the side. I was like, what the fuck does that mean? So I had to Google it real quick. But hey, the more you know, right?
Exchange for money,
Yeah.
these kind of things. So with that, any comments before we move on to verse 16?
Nope.
Okay, so verse 16.
Nope. he's all squared
he's
away.
ready to go.
Nope.
Talks about what we would normally think of as the cause for slavery. So Exodus 21:16 says, "He who kidnaps a man, whether he sells
Get
him."
the fuck out.
Yeah. This is the worst defense of biblical slavery that I can think of, because this deals with kidnapping. But there are so many other ways to get a slave, like buying them.
Yeah,
that
nobody
it's-
had to kidnap for slaves because we had war slaves, we had born slaves, we had people selling their children all fucking willy-nilly. Nobody's kidnapping to get slaves. This is
Yeah.
expressly about kidnapping, as in kidnapping, not grabbing people from Africa to sell in the Americas kind of kidnapping.
Right.
This is there's so much reading into it going on, projecting their own modern lens onto the text. It's literally laughable.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most common things that they say in defense of slavery, and it's one of the most irrelevant. Fine, you can't kidnap people, and let's grant it to them that this is specifically dealing with slavery. Okay, you cannot kidnap people and sell them into slavery. Great, fine. It's so irrelevant. I don't know why they keep bringing it up.
Oh, but it actually gets better because it's the person who kidnaps a man. And again, only a man. Women don't count. But if you kidnap a man, whether he's sold or found in his possession, the offender gets put to death. Cool. There's not a damn thing about returning the man to where he came from or freeing him. No, if you are sold into slavery by someone else, then it's not your new master's fault that you were kidnapped to get there. He gets to fucking keep you.
Yeah. We're
7 years, baby.
What I would love to see is the Mosaic law that says you shall not buy kidnapped slaves. That would be a nice one. If somebody is kidnapped, you are not allowed to buy him at all. How you would go about determining that they were kidnapped, I have no idea, but it would be a little bit better. But again, it's so irrelevant. Fine, you can't kidnap people. Great. That's a you get a thumbs up, I guess, but it's irrelevant.
Or is found in his possession shall surely be put to death. Now, with that one verse, he who kidnaps, or as we've shown here, the translators say, steal a man, whether he sells him or just has him in his possession, shall put to death. So, Steve, what does that do to our modern framework that, as we showed in the first session, our framework is sort of people being kidnapped and sold on a slave market. And what does that do to that whole idea?
Well, the first thing that comes out of this is this brings up the 8th commandment. You shall not steal. It includes not stealing other people, not kidnapping other people. And so I've heard the skeptics say, well, why didn't God just go ahead and ban slavery?
Okay, this is the clip from the very beginning of the video. And my goodness, is that such a good question. That is such a good question.
Yeah,
why didn't God just ban slavery? He banned murder. He banned
taking your father's name in vain.
Yeah, worshiping idols. He banned so much stuff, so many things. Dietary restrictions, clothing restrictions, sexual restrictions. He banned so much stuff. Why didn't he say, especially given the fact that this is Exodus, this is his people that he just freed, who have no system of slavery? Why would he not just say, hey, the thing that you guys were doing in Egypt, we're not doing that here. We're free men here. But he didn't. And so it's a good question, and I'm curious how it's going to get answered.
Well, he's not going to answer it.
Well, he will, but it'll be really stupid.
He did. This right here.
Well, there you go. That's the answer. Oh, well, I didn't know. I didn't know that. Why didn't he? Well, he did. He did ban slavery, as we just spent. Look, we spent a lot of time, but they spent 28 minutes talking about all the different forms of slavery, and then say,
check out Titan's comment.
I got to get a second monitor. I ordered one. I ordered one just today because, this is.
I know.
I can't see people's comments.
Many times I wish guests could highlight comments because, like, when I have guests in my streams, I've got like 14 windows open and I can't see the main stream. But yeah, Titan, exactly. It could definitely be applied to stealing another man's slaves.
Yeah, and actually, if you go to some of my very earlier, maybe my first or second slavery videos, this is how I originally read this passage, was that this was a law that was put in place to protect your slaves from being stolen from you. That's how I originally read this. The arguments have changed and kind of evolved over time, which who is it? Josh, boy, what's his name? The guy who does the amazing Kent Hovind impression.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Josh.
Dr. Josh, yeah.
He's got the big old freaking Dragon of Babylon in his background.
I'm
so bad with names.
I think Dr. Josh. I can't recall his name, but I got his book. Not going to be able to remember the name of the book, but I read his book that he did on, and there was a pretty lengthy passage dealing with biblical slavery, and that kind of changed my mind. But yeah, Titan, when I first read this, I genuinely thought that this was just a rule to stop people to stop your slaves from being stolen. To protect the slave owner, not the slaves. But my argument has changed a little bit over time.
Here is that type of slavery that was happening during the 1700s, 1800s, and even still continues to happen today. God has directly banned that altogether. And so it's very direct. There's no getting around it. You're not supposed to steal other people and to turn them into slaves and sell them as slaves.
Right. And so that's what it's saying. Is flat out, we can't have a slave market.
Oh boy. I'm so sorry. Something really weird just happened to all of my windows.
Yeah, the window shrunk to like half size or some shit. But yeah, under that rule, it actually would do absolutely jack shit to the early American colonial slave trade, because the slaves who were brought across the Atlantic were rarely captured. They were already captured, and the slave traders just bought them from the slave gatherers.
Yeah. It's not like there was it did take place. This is actually something. Thank you, Titan, Dr. Joshua Bowen. Yes. Yeah. Dr. Josh Bowen, his book. God, I can't remember the name of it. It's not Is God a Moral Monster?
That would be a good name.
No, that's Paul Copan. No, Is God a Moral Monster is Paul Copan. That's an apologist book. But I can't think of the name of his book. The Most Immoral Being. No, it doesn't matter. I can't think of it. But thank you, Titan. Yes, Dr. Joshua Bowen. So I did
Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament.
Yes, that's it. Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament. Yes, Dr. Josh Bowen. And he has quite a few others, actually. So maybe that wasn't it. Oh, goodness. I can't.
Ooh, he does have a lot. Yeah, the Atheist Handbook is the one I hear recommended most often. But there is one that's specifically titled, Did the Old Testament Endorse Slavery? Available on Audible, in fact. There's an audiobook version of that one.
Oh, goodness. I don't read, man. I always listen. I work, I own my own landscaping company. So I work outside all day. And I can't, if I were to read, I would literally never read. So I just have my earbuds going and I listen to people to talk about stuff.
Both Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the Atheist Handbook narrated by Seth Andrews.
Yep.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, he's a great narrator. Great narrator.
The best voice in atheism.
Yeah. I did a little bit of digging into this, and of course, especially in the European system of slavery, they would do a fair amount of war bands and kind of go into the country and do the kidnapping that they're referring to. But you're right. As far as Americans, it's not like there was a bunch of, people in the colonies were not creating war bands and going and kidnapping people. They were going to slave traders that were already established in Africa, which is why I brought up the you shall not purchase a kidnapped person. If that was in there, then their defense might make just a little bit more sense. But yeah, they were buying slaves. We were literally buying slaves from the nations around us. It's no different.
Yeah, which is expressly not prohibited. Also, while we're paused, you have to give Titan a wrench.
Tighten a wrench.
Yep. Go to the YouTube chat.
Thank you.
And then click the three little dots next to Titan's name, and it'll bring up a list of options, and one of them is add as moderator, because that is one of the things that determines whether a channel grows or not. Call it superstition if you will, but channels that don't have Titan wrenched don't grow.
Titan is the water to the YouTube soil. Add as moderator, Titan. Yeah, I have no idea how to do any of this. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I have 5 months into my channel here, and I've learned virtually nothing except how to hit record and hit post.
Hey, it's a good start.
It is a good start. It's just finding time. Life keeps lifing you very, very hard sometimes. And it can create some hiccups in the YouTube streaming. Managing moderator or standard moderator?
I would say managing, because Titan is like the universal mod of YouTube. There's very few channels where I go anyway where Titan doesn't already have super mod powers. I actually don't even know the difference between the mod levels, but
Hey, I trust you. I trust Titan. So I don't know if you if I just gave you access to take my channel down, but I trust you. You have done landscape design. So I steered away from landscape design quite a few years ago because I had a little hiccup. We can just leave it at that, and it wasn't worth the headache any longer. But I don't do design, but I do management and installations and all that good stuff. But okay. Well, I'm glad I can be the last blue wrench for you. All right. Maybe, just maybe, we'll finish this before tomorrow.
maybe.
Oh, it's already tomorrow for you, huh?
Probably. I'm time traveling again.
Yeah.
Yeah, Titan. I'm personally not sure what the difference is between the different levels of mod, but
Yeah, that's why I said I don't know what I just did, but I trust you, and I'm trusting Ember. So hopefully I didn't give you some powers, and I wake up with a YouTube message saying my channel's been taken down for.
Well, I mean, having watched Titan do modding in action, because even though my channel isn't super big or anything, I do still get some trolls and haters and transphobes and other assorted things, and Titan has not only really, really good judgment for when to let a person continue with the discourse or just shut them down, but also a really comprehensive knowledge of the community guidelines, like way more than I do.
Okay. Hey, you know what? It turns out, unlike the Bible, I'm really big on consent. Did you want a blue wrench, Titan? I know I completed your Infinity Cod piece, but I suppose I should have asked. I just did as blame Ember if you didn't want that wrench.
Yep.
Blame Ember. He told me to do it.
Ember's a bad influence.
Yeah. Peer pressure at its worst. Okay, let's get a little bit further into this
Mark.
video.
And we'll get into later. There's passages in, and we'll get to these where it says if a slave escapes, you can't send them back. And so that's
Well, so as far as I understand, you know what? No, we'll do it when he does it. We're not doing it now.
that's something else that we'll get to momentarily.
And the penalty too. What's the penalty? The penalty is put to death. There's capital punishment for people that are actually stealing other people and putting them in and selling them.
Right. So it prevents chattel slavery, which is the slavery that
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. He said this in the last video, and it irks me to no end. It doesn't prevent chattel slavery. I looked up the definition of chattel. I showed it on stream. Chattel is personal possession. A slave is a slave. You could own slaves. This is chattel slavery. This is chattel slavery. It doesn't prevent chattel slavery. Chattel slavery has nothing to do with kidnapping. It's totally and completely independent of each other, and it's frustrating every time they say it.
Yeah, they simply have no idea what the hell they're talking about. So I did a Google, as one does. Apparently, a managing moderator is can, instead of just simply moderating the chat like a standard mod, they can do like you can as the person running the channel. You can actually open the page of a person and see what their own channel looks like before taking moderating action. And apparently they can add words to your blocked words list, which is kind of neat because there's so many freaking words and they're changing all the time. I try to stay on top of it, but sometimes somebody will come in and start with a new slur that I've never heard before. and you know, so yeah, there's probably more, but that's just a couple of things that super mods can do.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, because even though I understand that there's virtually no risk, I do completely. I've seen Titan in many a stream, so I do completely trust. So I'm not saying that there's actually a risk, but even though I just took the risk of giving them managing moderator, you're the one that actually looked up the definition. So kudos to you.
Well, in fairness, I did the same thing, and I just went, yeah, I trust Titan, and just did it.
Yeah. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, it's only now I bothered to look up what exactly those powers are.
Well, hey, we learned together.
we think of. This whole section in Exodus 21, starting at verse 12 and going down through about verse 36, it has all the same laws that undergird. That's why we made such a big point before, is all the laws have to be applied equally to everyone. You can't have certain laws for certain people, certain laws for slaves, and other and different than other people, where some people get taken advantage of. Yeah, there's passages like the one we just read that say you can't take advantage of women, but it's because they're more vulnerable. And so
That's not what that passage said.
That's not that's not at all what that passage said. He just simply went into all of the disgusting things that it says, tried to sugarcoat it, didn't do a very good job, and then caps it off with, well, it was such amazing protections for those women who were vulnerable.
Yeah, we're just going to call it what we wish it were instead of what we actually literally just read.
Yeah.
But it's fine.
Wow.
all the laws, this whole section assumes that those passages we read earlier applies, which is everybody, bond or free, slave or not, have to be treated.
Side question here, and maybe Titan might know this. Aside from being possibly annoying, do they allow vaping on stream? Is that banned in the YouTube world?
I have not heard of such a thing. It doesn't mean they didn't add it, but no. Telltale still does it. He still vapes on.
He
on
does.
stream.
Okay, I know.
Yeah.
I know you can't like smoke or drink. You can't show all stuff. There's I don't know. I never bothered to
But
look
yeah,
into it.
Titan says that managing mods can also add and remove wrenches to others, and time out mods, and add a chat delay. So like that whole slow mode thing that you get on a lot of channels. So that's neat.
Wow.
It is cool to have
Yeah.
a mod that can mod other mods when the mods try to get out of line. But making mini mods, that can be cool too. Theoretically, Titan could walk into a chat and just broop, everybody has a wrench.
Hey, all right.
In theory.
Yeah, in theory. Yeah, it sounds it's a heavy responsibility I just put on you, Titan. Are you sure you're up for this? Can you handle it? Okay. Well, as long as you feel more comfortable, it's like walking outside without a shirt on. You need your wrench.
Yeah, I kind of relate to that. I'm only a mod on like a quarter of the channels that I visit. Usually it's one where I'm a frequent enough guest that they gave me a wrench just so I can post links. Like they're like, hey, where's promote your channel, and so I can post the link directly. But
Oh.
I have a wrench on enough channels that I actually feel like the digital equivalent of underdressed when I go somewhere where I don't have a wrench.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? It's your lucky day, Ember. I gave you a wrench too.
Yay!
Everybody's getting wrenches.
You get a wrench, and you get a
And
wrench,
you get a
and
wrench.
you get a wrench.
Everybody's for the low cost of $5.99.
equally. And the bond slaves were not to be abused. The whole rest of the law, the slaves had to rest on the Sabbath. They had to be.
So how did they address the beating of the slave? They literally just said that if you beat a slave, then you're going to get beaten too. Is that how they? Mm-hmm. Is that how they addressed it?
So,
Okay.
so that's three gross misstatements so far, and he's working on a fourth with the whole rest on the Sabbath thing, because while it's technically true, it's because anyone who didn't rest on the Sabbath got their ass banished.
Wasn't working on the Sabbath death or
It,
banished?
it depends on what you did. There are certain things that you could do that would make you put away out from the people, and then other things you could do were death.
Okay. All right. Well. Yeah.
Part of the feast days, Deuteronomy chapter 16. Deuteronomy 16 tells you you will have a feast. You're going to go and have fun whether you like it or not. And you're going
Right.
to take all the servants and all the strangers, and you will go out and every
So
That
they
raises
flashed
another
that.
interesting point.
They flashed that little graphic really
Rest
quick. Let's see if we
on the
can
Sabbath.
pause on it
They-
and see if it says that the slaves and servants and war captives, if they all get to participate
had to
in
be
this.
part of the feast day.
Because they usually leave it up long enough to at least read it. They flashed
Deuteronomy
that one.
chapter 16.
Okay.
No. Okay. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, and you, your son, and your daughter, and your male and female servants, and the Levite who is with you in town, and stranger who are in your midst in this place. Whoa! So maybe there's more to this, but this just says you shall rejoice before the Lord your God. Where is the feast and the fun and the festivities coming?
This is referring to a specific thing. Like there's context that needs to be here. Oh, okay, yeah. This is the festival of Abib that is mentioned in the actual 10 Commandments that no one ever talks about. You will always observe the feast of Abib. That's that unleavened bread thing. But yeah, it starts out, observe the month of Abib, and keep the Passover unto the Lord thy God. For in the month of Abib the Lord thy God brought thee out of Egypt by night. Thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto the Lord thy God of thy flock and the herd, in the place which the Lord shall choose to place his name there. Thou shalt eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread therewith, even the bread of affliction, for thou comest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that thou mayest remember the day when thou camest forth out of Egypt all the days of thy life. And there shall be no leavened bread seen with thee in all thy coast 7 days, neither shall there anything of the flesh which the TLDR. for a 7-day period around Passover, you can only eat non-yeast bread. There will be no meat. There will be just the damn bread. And you must observe this feast or die. Because it's one of the actual 10 Commandments.
Yeah. Hey, have you ever thought about being like a fire and brimstone preacher? I think you might. I think you might make some money doing that. I think you could scare some people.
If I really tried, I could definitely pull off that Greg Locke nonsense. I'm mostly going for farce. I could. The problem is that I don't know how to express it. It's not a moral thing. It's not an intellectual integrity thing. I was a repo agent for 3 years. I have no problem selling my honor to be able to eat, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just can't bring myself to lie to people on that level, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, really, what's the difference between an actual fire and brimstone preacher reading from Revelations and a farce? What's the real difference?
Yeah, it's a Poe's law thing. You can't. That's actually been suggested to me too. Is that I should, a la Edward Current, do stuff showing how absurd fundamentalism is. Mm-hmm. Except because of Poe's law, there is no way someone could tell whether I'm making fun of it or I actually am a fundamentalist.
I mean, yeah, you're right. You are right. But hey, when you were going through those passages, I was kind of thinking about going to church. I don't want to go to hell. You're scaring me there for a minute. Man.
I just need the organ music.
Yeah.
3:16 tells you will have a feast. You're going to go and have fun whether you like it or not. And you're going to take all the servants and all the strangers, and you will go out, and everybody's going to have a party.
Okay, so you're going to take all the servants. So, by and large, I do just grant, because it's just not worth the time to make a huge stink about whether a servant is a slave. I grant the argument that there are servants and there are slaves. I'm curious if the actual slaves, like the war captives that he was so scared are going to come and stab you, or maybe that was that in the last video?
Yeah, the last video.
Yeah, you gotta make these people slaves for life, because if you don't, then you're at war. They're gonna come and they're gonna kill you at night. I'm curious if those people were attending this feast, or if this is just something that has to do with Hebrew servants. I mean, I don't know.
Party, and you're going to treat everybody, because everybody's going to have a feast day. And so all the feast days throughout the year, the bond slaves had to go, the strangers and the aliens had to go. They all had to rest. All the laws apply equally. The law had to apply to them just.
So yeah, I mean, I think he's not saying it, but if you take what he's saying at face value, he's saying all of the war captives, everybody would have to attend this.
Oh, what happened?
What happened?
Oh, you froze and went silent for a second.
Oh, no.
Okay, more random research. There apparently is actually a channel setting. If you go into YouTube Studio, Settings, and Community, there's the list of where you can manually enter the channel names of both managing moderators and standard moderators. And just below that is a box called approved users. And apparently these dudes, an approved user, their posts don't get filtered at all. They can post links, they can use blocked words, they can post inappropriate comment. They can do whatever the fuck they want, but they don't have a wrench. So that's a thing. And then the next box after that is the hidden users. When you block somebody, I have quite a list in there.
I haven't had to block anybody yet, but
I actually need to add more people while I'm in here. What the hell was Sam's channel? Redefine living. Oh shit, there's a bunch of channels with that name. I'm not sure which one is. Fuck it. I'll wait, and if he shows up, then I'll just get him that way. Because you can also add users to the blocked from the channel list by using the 3 little dots next to their name too.
Yeah, luckily I haven't had to block anybody yet, and but again, I'm 97 91 subscribers actually. I got 2 subscribers today. I'm very excited about that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
It's the same as to free citizens. The reason I say that is because the next section, starting in verse 18, is really where the crux of a lot of these accusations about slavery come in. So, Steve, if you could start at 18.
These accusations about slavery. They're not accusations. He's already admitted that there are chattel slaves. Like, he said this in the last video. These aren't accusations.
And 18 and 19 have nothing to do with slavery. Slavery comes in again at verse 20.
Yeah, let's let him
And read through
here.
21.
If men have a quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and he does not die but remains in bed, if he gets up and walks around outside on his staff, then he who struck him shall go unpunished. He shall only pay for his loss of time and shall take care of him until he is completely healed. If a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod and he dies at his hands, he shall be punished. If, however, he survives a day or two, no vengeance shall be taken, for he is his property.
Oh!
Case closed. Argument
Oh!
over. Atheist wins.
That's even better. The other versions of the Bible, they all say, if he gets better within a day or two. This says that he only has to survive a day or two. If he dies on the 3rd day, you're in the clear.
Yeah, I think this is a reiteration of Exodus. I don't think this is Exodus. I think this is because Exodus doesn't have the whole fist and does not die but remains in bed if he gets up and walks around. That's not Exodus, I don't believe. I think this is another iteration, but I wish that they would. Did they say where he's reading from?
Completely healed.
Well, this has to be
If a man
Exodus, because
strikes
that's
his man, have
Exodus
a
20 and
quarrel.
21.
So Exodus 18. Maybe I'm just not as familiar as I thought I was. I get my biblical slavery a little mixed up.
Yeah, there's so many passages.
Exodus 21:18. Oh, okay. So no, okay. Yep, you're right. This is Exodus.
Which is nice
and dealing with
because
personal injuries. Okay.
yeah, they're supposed to be talking about Exodus in this episode, so it's nice that they're actually in the right fucking book for a change.
Yeah, but you got to take the whole book within context and blah blah blah. Okay, yeah, my bad. This is Exodus. I was wrong. But in the grand scheme of things, when you use the word property to refer to a human being, it's almost like it's a slave. Almost.
Yep.
And one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and he does not die but remains in bed. If he gets up and walks around outside on his staff, then he who struck him shall go unpunished. He shall only pay for his loss of time and shall take care of him until he is completely healed. If a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod and he dies at his hands, he shall be punished. If, however, he survives a day or two, no vengeance shall be taken, for he is his property.
Okay, so in that, verse 18 and 19, notice that the punishment is the same for all people. Look back at verse 18. If men have a quarrel, okay, so who does that include, Steve?
They're fighting everybody.
Does that include slaves?
Yes.
Okay, read it again.
No. I mean,
It's so bad. It's so bad.
so if I'm your slave and we get into a fist fight, how do we reckon that's good? Even if I do manage to hit you, I'm definitely going to get beat with a rod afterwards, you know?
Yeah.
Like, these fucking jackasses, they're trying so hard. But I wanna hear them try to justify 21. That should be good.
It's so bad.
Because it says both slave and property
Yeah,
in that
if men-
verse.
Yeah. Yes. The word slave and property, Why? Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me gather myself here for a second. I just get that. I don't know if you get that when you just hear something that's just so stupid that you almost don't know how to counter it immediately. You have to think like if somebody were to say to you like, "Hey, the sky is green," and they were being dead serious, would you immediately know how to like no, it's blue. You can just look outside, and they're like, "Nope, it's green." You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but it's just so stupid that it takes me a second to gather my thoughts. So if it says that if a man has a fist fight and essentially one gets injured, that the other one is to take care of him, and then in the next sentence it says, literally the next sentence it says that if you beat a slave and he doesn't die, you're not to be punished, and then you say that those are somehow, does 19 cancel out 20? You know what I mean? They're if you're going to say that the rules apply to everybody, then these are two completely contradictory statements, one right after the other. If that makes sense. Goodness. All right.
Have a quarrel. That includes slaves, it includes free people. All those passages we read earlier, all the laws have to apply to everybody equally. If any two men have a quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and he does not.
I do have a Discord server, Titan. I don't have it. I don't have. There's nothing going on there. When I did my very first debate about biblical slavery, which I absolutely crushed. If you guys haven't listened to that, it was a thing of beauty. I did really, really well in that debate. But anywho, that's how I did the debate, was through Discord, because I didn't know how to work any of this YouTube stuff. So I just recorded it on like a live Discord call. But I don't do Discord. I don't know. My daughter's a Discord wizard, but I don't know a single thing about it. But I do have a Discord. I'll have to link it. You know what? I think it actually is linked in my my about section or whatever.
Not die but remains in bed. What that means is he got hurt and he can't work. So if they get in a fight and one of them gets hurt and the other one can't work, he has to stay in bed. This is dealing with any two people and one of them gets hurt and they can't work.
Well, the injury is to the extent that it makes him bedridden.
It makes him bedridden.
And you're going to get to it here in just a second. The next injury is if it's an injury to where he's not bedridden, that he's still able to stand up and still be able to walk around, which is a lesser injury than if one that is actually bedridden somebody where they can't work or do anything for however many days it might be.
Right. And so then look at the consequences. So all what we just read was the if. Look at the end of verse 19. If somebody gets hurt and they have to stay in bed, there's two things he has to do. He shall take care of him until he is completely healed. And just prior to that, he shall pay for his loss of time. So if somebody gets hurt, they get in a fight, any two men, bond or free.
Pay for his loss of time. How much, what's the value of a slave's time? How do you pay for a loss of a slave's time?
Yeah, that's nonsensical.
It is.
Citizen or not, they get in a fight. One of them gets injured to the point they're in bed and they can't work. They're injured and they're in bed. Then the person that caused the injury has to pay for.
Yeah, I agree with him on this. That that is what it says. Now, make it apply to slaves. That's what I'm curious about. Make that sentence apply to slaves, saying, when we know that the next sentence clearly states that does not apply to slaves.
Or their loss of time and their care, which means their medical care. So we don't miss this. Into verse 19, he shall only pay for his loss of time and shall take care of him until he is completely healed. So the context here is, I'm belaboring this for a reason. Somebody got hurt. They're bedridden. They got hurt enough to where they can't.
Lying can be difficult. Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. He's belaboring this for a reason, because he's lying.
Go up and go back to work. The person that caused that has to pay for the loss of time, pay for the medical expenses.
And take care of,
to take care of him.
Until he's healed.
That is the context for the next two verses, which are the ones that always get brought up about the specifics on the slave. So verses 20 to 22. If a man strikes his male or female slave, and again, it's an ebed, his servant, could be bond slave,
Irrelevant.
whatever. If a man strikes his male or female bond slave with a rod and he dies at his hand, he shall be punished. However, if he survives a day or two, this is the bond slave, no vengeance shall be taken, for he is his property. And that's the one that everybody gets all wrapped around the axle over.
I wonder why. I wonder why. Are you not
I can't
reading
imagine.
it? No.
Now,
no.
the word property there is Strong's 3701, and it literally means silver. The word is kesef. It means silver. It's his money, is some of the translation.
Oh, okay. Now, now it's so much better. What it actually means is that it's his money.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Say, why would he say that? The reason is because the point I just belabored a minute ago. What did he? Any two men, including a slave, one of them gets injured. What were the two things they had to pay for? He had to pay for what? The loss of his time and his medical care.
Right.
But if it's a slave from the owner, how are you going to pay for his time? Because you just cost yourself the money. The slave, the bond slave,
All right.
owed you money. That's why he was there. He was under the bond. He owed you money.
Right.
And you caused him not to be able to work. How are you going to pay for yourself? How are you going to pay a fine to yourself for his loss of time? And so that's what that means in verse 21. However, if he survives a day or two, no vengeance, no penalty shall be taken, for he is his money. He's the money of the owner.
Right.
And so it just gets me frustrated, because what this is really doing is the text just said that if you do anything enough to hurt somebody, enough to where they lose work, then you have to pay for their time and pay for their medical expenses. We'd call it workman's compensation.
So sure, but what if you? What if you don't injure them to the point where they are bedridden? What if you just? You can, you can do some pretty serious damage. You can cause some very serious physical pain to somebody without making them bedridden. I don't know where he's going with this.
You got to pay for that. That's anybody, even a slave. But if it's somebody you own, you don't have to pay yourself. That's all it's saying. And the skeptics take this and run with it and make.
Yeah. You go if you beat somebody and they aren't bedridden from the beating, you go completely unpunished. He's saying what the actual Bible passage says, and making it sound. He's just saying it like it's a good thing. I don't know.
Make it something bad and make it, oh, you can beat them half to death. I've heard some of these atheists and skeptics say, oh, you can break their legs, you can pound them with whatever you want, as long as they don't die, you can do whatever you want because they're a piece of farm equipment. No, you're taking something out of context. You're taking one sentence, one phrase, and using it in a way that the text of the Bible just doesn't say. It just says.
Kind of like what he's doing right now. Some of these frames that I pause on, I just love, like this guy's face right now.
Oh yeah.
You have to take.
It's fun to just randomly pause and see what you can get people to. I do it to myself all the time. I'm not picking on anybody. It's just funny.
Care of them. And we belabored the point. All of these passages, you have to treat everybody the same. And if you did strike him enough to where he's in bed for 2-3 days, he can go to the judges,
Right.
and say, he bruised me, he injured me. And if it's, as we're going to get to, if it's enough to where he actually is maiming, you have to let him free. Or if it's just even a bruise, the judge says, okay, same thing got to happen to you.
Now, the other thing to bring out here is that the skeptics, what you just said there is that, oh, they could beat them, they could maim them, they could do whatever they wanted to. No, that's not what this is saying. In any society, at any given point in time, you have people that are cruel people. This is talking about somebody who happens to mistreat somebody else. This is how it's going to be dealt with. It's not saying and giving them permission to mistreat people or be cruel to people. That's just not given anything such shape or form as to that. It's just saying is that for those people that if they happen to be have this happen or have a quarrel between whether it's even slaves or free people or whatever it might be, here's the conditions of how it needs to be.
Yeah, Titan, you're exactly right. Any form of punishment that is monetary really only affects the people that can't afford it. You're completely right about that.
Dealt with.
The closest you could say to that, look at verse 21. If he survives a day or two, no vengeance shall be taken. Or some of the translations say he shall not be punished. The accusation from the people just attempting to tear down the Bible is that right there in verse 21, no punishment shall be taken. And I submit it's in the context of 18 to 21. It's in the context of no punishment shall be taken because he's your money. Read the sentence. No punishment shall be taken for he is his money. How are you going to, he just said that if it's anybody else, you got to pay for their time.
Yeah.
But
Okay. So what he's saying is that in one sentence he says that the bruise for bruise literally down to a bruise for a bruise is equally applied to everybody. And in the very next sentence he's saying that if you were to just bruise your slave, no punishment shall be taken because it's hard to explain how stupid he's being right now. In one circumstance, it's a bruise for a bruise, but in the circumstances of a slave, it's bruise for money. But since the slave is your money, there's no further punishment to be taken. I think is what he's getting at. But why wouldn't the bruise for the bruise still apply? If you were to beat your slave with a rod, why would you also not be beaten with that rod? Well, because slaves and non-slaves have different rules. It's not applied equally. It's so clearly not applied equally. It says no punishment. It says no vengeance shall be taken, for he is his money. He's trying to make it sound good, and it just isn't. And again, we have to keep in mind that all of this, regardless of what this dude tries to make up, this applies to Hebrew servants, not foreign servants, not the actual chattel slaves of the Bible. This only applies to Hebrew servants, as it clearly states at the beginning of this text
you're a bondservant,
chapter.
No punishment because he's your money. That's what he's saying. He's not saying you can beat him half to death. That's not what he's saying.
It definitely is.
Yeah. I mean, it says no punishment shall be taken. And I get what he's saying. He's saying that the reason no punishment shall be taken is because like what I said earlier, what is a slave's time worth? You can't make restitution to the slave because they didn't have anything to restitute. But you're still saying that in one circumstance, if it's two regular citizens, the bruise for a bruise and the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth applies. But in a slave-master relationship, it's eye for money, tooth for money. That's kind of what he's saying, which completely discredits his entire argument that the laws apply equally to everybody. It's really stupid.
It doesn't say that. It doesn't mean that. And twisting it to say that is either an intentional twisting of the scriptures because they're looking for something to tear down the Bible, or they didn't take the time to just do the research, or they're lying, or all of those.
Yeah. He just accused the atheists of lying about the Bible. Interesting.
Because what this is really doing is a moral protection of people that were under a legal obligation because they borrowed money and then owed it back, and they're having to spend their time working for somebody to work off a debt, and it's saying you can't abuse these people. And twisting that to saying that, oh, this is chattel slavery, piece of farm equipment that you can just buy and slave and buy and sell and beat them up whenever you want. No, it's saying exactly the opposite. And it just frustrates me. Again, the word property, Strong's 3701. And remember, this bond slave made this agreement to pay something back. And that's why they're there in the first place. Just to repeat, because this keeps going, Leviticus 24, verse 17 to 22 says that if you injure anyone, including bruises, including slaves, you will be punished with the same punishment. All of that undergirds this passage that we just read. Now, go down to verse 26 in this passage. It says that bond slaves can't be mistreated. That's what it's saying, starting in verse 26. And that's one more of the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth part, right? It says that if bond slaves cannot be mistreated, and if you do, it has to be. I mean,
So this is just another distinction between free people and slaves. The law clearly is not applied equally, because he just went over the eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and then he goes into this passage where it's eye for freedom. If a man strikes the eye of his male or female slaves and destroys it, he shall let him go free. It's not saying that the man who did the striking shall also lose his eye, as it does in the other passages. That he just gets his freedom. It's so clearly not equal and applied to everybody.
look at verse 27. If he knocks out a tooth of his male or female slave, he shall let him go free on account of his tooth. Now, the same thing the judges would apply is, okay, he tore up my knee,
Right.
or any other body part,
Right.
then the same thing would apply, right?
Yeah. So these are actually acting as deterrents. It's actually laying things out so that these people that have put themselves in a voluntary servitude.
I agree with this. This is acting as a deterrent. It's saying don't put your slave's eye out, because if you do, you will have to let him go free. It's a deterrent. It's just not a very good one.
To repay a debt. These particular prescriptions that are put here, these laws that are put here, rules, are there as deterrents, so that the person will not abuse them. Hey, if you're going to abuse this person and beat this person, guess what? They're going to go free. If you have some type of an injury or that maims them or something, they're going to go free. And so just because they have put themselves in this position of as a bond slave, a bond servant, servitude in order to repay a debt, does not give you license to go out and treat them however you want to, or mistreat them however you want to.
Right. And verse 21 does not override verses 23 to 25. Verses 23 to 25 is the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Can't abuse them. If you do, you got to set them free. And so,
Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You can't abuse them. If you do, you gotta set them free. Those are completely contradictory things.
Uh-huh.
If you gotta set them free, then it's no longer eye for an eye or tooth for a tooth. Good Lord.
so verse 21 is in the context of Leviticus 24, and it's in the context of verses 24, 25, 26, 27 that deal with treating people fairly. And so you can't take one little phrase and rip it from its context and make it say something else. And Steve, we're gone a little long, and we still got a fair amount to do. So I think we're going to end up with a part 3. And so with that, we'll probably pause here, because there's still a couple of real good.
And with that, we will also pause here. To recap, I would say that they gave new arguments that I haven't heard from apologists before, and I've listened to quite a few. But they didn't say anything that added any value to their arguments. They twisted, they ducked, they dodged, they weaved, but nothing that remotely changed my mind in any way, shape, or form. Maybe they'll do it in part 3. Maybe. But I doubt it. Okay. Well, with that, this stream ran really long. How long did it... Is there a way on StreamYards to see how long your stream
Yeah, it
has
should
gone?
say in the upper left corner of our display window.
I see.
The
Okay,
live
yeah,
timer.
I see it right there, 2:33. All right. Cool. All right. The more you know. So yeah, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna watch some of this. I don't think I could possibly stand to hear myself talk again for 2.5 hours. But I'm curious how the quality turned out, because I've never used StreamYards before. So if if it's good, I think I'm just gonna switch over to StreamYards. I liked it's very mainstream. It's very user friendly. I do like it.
Yeah, it's pretty slick. Like
Yeah.
I said, there's some things that some other things do, but they are always adding new features.
Sure.
Just as a for example, the simulcasting that's enabled. I could simulcast to my channel or my Facebook or my Twitch or whatever the fuck because that's enabled. I think it was a month or two ago, but that's a new feature. Like it's a cool feature, and they
Yeah.
just turned it on. So yeah,
Cool.
you never know what's coming next.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, man. Thank you so much. You're. I keep saying, man. You've decided with any all.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm still more comfortable with they them, but I go with any all for a couple of reasons. The first is to kind of like be in solidarity with Chris Tyson, but also because Mark especially keeps making that minor misgendery goof, and I don't want people to feel bad when they're just legitimately just talking conversationally, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just it's difficult because it's so ingrained into the vernacular. Like my fiance, I mean, I call her dude and bro all the time. So yeah, I just
Yeah,
want to
the
be as
last time I
respectful as
dated
can.
somebody who incidentally is also a non-binary person like myself, went with dude all the time, but
Yeah,
you know.
I it's so for me it's so decoupled from those words like man, dude, bro. It's so decoupled from gender for me that it's
Yeah.
just
Well,
I
I'm
call my
I'm
daughters I mean, bro, dude, it's just
I'm really weird about it because my mother, before I was ever around, she used to raise and train and race horses and such. So to me, dude means someone who doesn't know how to ride a horse, which means virtually everyone I know it applies to.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's just yeah, it's just for me it's just not a it's not I would never refer speaking of strictly of gender, I would never refer to a woman as woman. You know what I mean? I'd never be like, "Hey, woman." You know what I mean? It's just I would
Females.
yeah, hey, my female upstairs and sleeping. No, it's just, I think that's, I think you know what I mean. It's just like, hey, what's up, man? I would say that to literally anybody, but I would never, because it's decoupled from gender for me, but I would never say, hey, what's
People are
up,
people.
woman? Yeah.
It's I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm an NB, but I think it's more because a generational thing. Like people somewhere around about the mid '70s just started thinking of people as people first and foremost, and whatever their gender presentation is a secondary
Sure.
characteristic.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to change it up a little bit, but I don't know if I can, and I don't know if I will because it's just I don't look at somebody and refer to them regardless of what they identify as. I just don't refer to people as their gender, even though man, dude, bro is associated with males, but it's just yeah. I am not from the South. I am from quite northern Illinois. Chicago.
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 Not the
My
worst traffic in the country, but holy fuck. Like I can cross all of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana in the same amount of time it takes me to get just across Chicago Metro.
yeah.
Motherfucking
Yeah, no,
sure.
I'm not in Chicago, but close enough to it that I can smell it. My best female friend here in the South, dude, yeah. I, I don't know where you're from, Titan, but yeah, I can definitely see why dude would be probably just more of a male term, but like I said, I mean, I have two 2 children, and I've always referred to them as dude or bro, and they that's how they refer to me as well. It's just how it is. I don't know. Reared in New Orleans. Okay. I believe you because you just said reared and not raised. I believe you were reared in New Orleans. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. Oh, hold on. We got more. Most gender non-specific uses of dude were in the South. I thought that could be the case. That could be the case. I don't know. It almost seems a little counterintuitive though, because in the South, I think they're a little bit more gender specific. They're not quite as liberal as the rest of the world. The South is its own separate country. Well, you were in New Orleans.
I've been through it.
Crops are raised, children are reared. Yeah, you're from New Orleans, that's for sure. That's a very New Orleans thing to say. Oh boy. Okay. All right. Well, hey, I'm actually gonna try to end it this time. I don't want to cut anybody's comments off here, but yeah. Thank you so much for doing this. The view count wasn't amazing, but for me, it was a very fun experience. It was my first live, and I'm definitely gonna do more lives. This was fun. I may as well do lives because I run my videos that I post in the exact same way that I would do a live stream. There's no difference. Like I said, I don't do any editing, or I don't even watch to make sure that I didn't make some massive mistake. I just kind of post it, which is essentially doing lives, just not live. So
Yeah. And if you do have a section you need to clip out, the YouTube editor can do that. It'll take like a day to process, but it can do it.
really,
Yeah. I've actually thought about doing switching over to doing lives for because most of my content reviews are just me reacting and coming up with doing the brain thing all off the top of my head. So I just do like a Godless Engineer does, do a live stream, do a few different things plus whatever I want to do a reaction video to in the stream, and then clip that out and post it as its own video
to
the
make
next
videos,
week.
yeah.
Yeah, because one downside to live streams, it varies from channel to channel. Some channels are exclusively live stream and they do okay. But as far as my metrics, only about 25% of my viewers see a live stream and 50% only see traditional regular videos. And then there's the overlap group. So, yeah, there's a lot of pluses to lives, but depending on your audience, you can't necessarily rely on them exclusively.
Yeah, no, I can definitely attest to that because I did. This is my first actual live stream, but I did a debate that was technically live, but I had 2 subscribers at the time. It was my very first video that I ever did. So technically it was a live debate, but there was no engagement. There was no views. I think even to this day, the very first video I did, I think probably has around like 12 views or so. But then I downloaded the video and just posted it as a normal video, and it did infinitely better, even when I still had, maybe 10 or 12 subscribers or so. So yes, they posting it as a regular video definitely did better than the live, no doubt. Even though it's the exact same video.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
But they're definitely worth exploring because I mean, at the very least, the interaction with the audience makes it more fun. I think
it really, yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. It's hard to keep up with all the comments in the comment section, and I do my best.
Yeah, I'm terrible at it, but when I can, it adds a real sense of like hanging out with your friends.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So the live stream comment section is just that much better because you can act in real time. I just got to get another screen so I can have both of the the chat and the YouTube stuff and the StreamYard stuff all pulled up, a little bit more streamlined. But enough of the. I won't occupy any more of your time. I will actually end it this time as long as Titan doesn't make another comment before I end. Thank you very much. I'm going to end it now. I appreciate it. And I'd definitely be happy to do this again.
Yeah, yeah, and you should work on an outro too. I missed the ball half the time myself. Like when we were over at my place, I ended up having to steal that line from Cirrus again and go with the insert end of video tagline here. But you should at least throw something like "Thanks for watching," subscribe if you haven't. Appreciate, thumbs up, whatever, just a thing that you throw out there to show people that it's like the end of the video, you're wrapping up and you're about to terminate. I know this is like not the sort of thing that really is good content for a live, but on the flip side, this is when we have a chance to talk verbally, so it's faster.
Yes. No, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My one video. See? Oh, no. See, now we can't end it. But in all seriousness, you can dip out at any time. I appreciate you coming on at all. But Titan left another comment, so I'm going to have to respond here.
Yeah,
My one video has 500 views. How many subscribers do you have, Titan? I think you said a little bit earlier in the chat, but I can't.
Yeah, I haven't checked in a while. Actually, I haven't been to Titan's channel since I subbed to it, because all must sub to Titan. But
Well, I will sub to Titan. I don't think I'm Titan's sub yet, but
yeah, because we're very, very gradually getting Titan to 1,000.
okay, I get subs are promising. Let me. Okay, so you didn't say. Is Titan still here? Oh yeah, that's, you know what? Well, while I have you, and I can pick your brain just a little bit. Is there on StreamYards? Is there a way to see who's watching?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
I can see how many eyeballs and where they're
Okay.
from. Like if you're streaming to both YouTube and Twitch, you can see which one's
Okay.
on YouTube, which
Yeah.
one's on Twitch.
All right.
For example.
Yeah, I do see that. Put user in timeout. Okay. It'd be nice to know. Well, I think it's just probably me, you, and Titan here.
Probably.
Over 200. I don't pay attention. Okay. Yeah, 500 views. I even to this point, I think my best video, I still only think is maybe around 900. 900. That's a video that blew up for me. So 500. Yeah, that's. I mean, yeah. I try not to pay attention to it too much because it can get discouraging when you like you said, when you create this, like, you're like, man, I am on fire. I'm nailing out the talking points. I'm on my game. And then it's like 14 views, and you're like, oh man, I really thought that video was gonna do something.
I know, and the bitch of it is,
doesn't.
it really could be the best content ever on YouTube, but unless people open it,
Right.
it'll never get traction.
Yeah, and that's why I really want to work on thumbnails. My thumbnails are very generic, but I like I said, I mean, I'm so new at this. I've tried a bunch of different thumbnail editors. I actually do like Canva for creating thumbnails. I think it's a pretty powerful tool.
Yeah. I know a few people who swear by Canva. I think Mark Reed uses Canva. I'm a Photoshop crazy person myself, but
Yeah.
you know, we all got to have some type of gizmo to help us do the things.
Yeah. I want to. Yeah, I think. I mean, I think that's really what it comes down to is the first few words of your title and your thumbnail. I think that's the only thing that really, and of course, how much YouTube decides to push it out with what is it, the engagement or the reach or whatever.
Yeah, and that algorithm it's unpredictable. It's a crazy bastard.
It is. I think. I don't know. we can speculate all day, but yeah, I think it puts the video out to, let's just say, 10 people, and if a certain percentage of those 10 people click on it, it'll put it out to like 50, and then if a certain percentage of that, it'll keep putting it out to more and more based off of how many people it's enticing to click on it. And when the clicks slow down, the reach slows. Is it reach? What is it called? The engagement. The oversight. No.
Yeah, there's so many different metrics.
Yeah, impressions. There we go.
Yeah, those
How
damn
many
impressions.
Yeah, I think based off, I think it's related to how many clicks it's getting, and that's related
you
to the
would
thumbnail.
think so, but I've had so many videos where the click through rate was like my normal click through rate is 4 or 5%. I'll have videos that hit 20%, and the algorithm just stops showing it to people. The impressions
Really?
just drop, and I'm like, you said yourself people are enjoying this. Why aren't you feeding it to the people?
Yeah. I've
sake.
never had that much of a click through rate. 20%. That's I average right around 5 to 6%. Do you mind if okay? Do you mind if I end the stream, but stick around for just a moment longer?
Sure.
So this is an ologist. Okay, if you made it through all of that, first off, you should be nominated for an award. Because
People are going to watch it on times 2. That's what I would do. I'd be like, that's almost 3 hours. Times 2.
Skip it. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll sound like chipmunks.
yeah.
My laugh actually does sound like a chipmunk at times 2. I've watched streams that I was in to get to a certain point, and I'll put it on times 2 to find out where it is. And I sound ridiculous. I mean, I sound ridiculous now, but
No, I mean, you got you legit. Okay, hold on. I got it. I'm gonna end this stream. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Like, subscribe. I appreciate it. I am ending
Tell your
this
friends.
video. Tell your friends. Share.
Live long
Don't
and
forget-
prosper.
Yeah, all the things. Imagine all the things. Insert them here. I'm ending it. Thank you.